All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here with a very special guest, Wunder, MSI champion 2019, 2018, the man who, I remember 2018, was 2018 the Super Wunder man, or was 2019 Super Wunder man? I think it might have been 2018.
It was 2018, yeah.
Because 2018 was a pretty fucking sick Wunder year. I remember this year. You guys ran into IG and then you guys just, you guys overperformed and you reached your peak and you stopped trying. What did Young Buck say?
Yeah, it was along those lines, yeah. I don't actually remember, but no, it was okay. I mean, we didn't win in Europe. Actually, I think our summer split, we got like knocked out in quarters, but then we bounced back in Gauntlet and made Worlds anyways.
That shit was messy. Bro, it's weird how everything plays out because like Schalke played, was it Schalke? I think Schalke played the finals, right? And then I remember they all got sick.
Actually, was it Schalke who played the finals?
Did
I think
Schalke
we went
play
like
against
3.
Fnatic?
I think we went 3-2 against because we were running the Gauntlet. We went like 3-2 against Splice. That was like our hardest match, and then everything else we 3-1, I think.
Because I remember it was like the Schalke team, they went to party, some of the players, after the finals that they lost against Fnatic. And then they had the Gauntlet 1 week after. And I remember it was like, some of their players were sick and it was a complete mess. I remember Upset talking about this.
Yeah, Schalke made finals, yeah. I mean, we hadn't like played for like 4 weeks, I think. Before the Gauntlet, we were like knocked out in round 1. So.
Yeah. Was it against Misfits, you guys?
Yeah, I think we got 3-0. I think we got 3-0 by Misfits, yeah. They were playing like Draven, diving bot level 2, stuff like that. Like, we were just getting completely fucked.
Good times. Yo, did you see the Emenes thing on Twitter?
Yeah, I saw it, yeah. I saw people react to it as well, but I don't know, like...
What do you think?
I mean, I think of course it's really stupid to write something like that. And he has like already like a what's it called? He has like a stigma against him already that he's like this toxic guy.
Yeah.
But I think like sure, like disciplinary action like within the team or like something like that. But I think if he gets punished, like if he loses a world spot, something like that, I think that would be completely crazy. Because I think I was watching like earlier today, like Cadrel react to it.
Yeah.
And he was like spinning all these ideas of like, okay, now Jojo Pune is gonna play for them, or Diplex or whatever, right? Like I don't actually know who will play for them. But I feel like if that's gonna be the outcome of this, then yeah, I don't know. Like, I mean, I would not write something like he did in the first place, but I would be extra careful, you know, because I would feel like that's like way too far.
Yeah.
Like he shouldn't lose games or like lose anything. Maybe he can get like a little fine, you know, or like internal, like a warning by Riot, you know.
Agreed. Yeah.
I feel like that's like the extent it goes to. It was just like really blown up because he attacked. Like if this was just a random player, he just attacked the streamer instead. That's like, I guess, all of it.
It's like in the context of League, I don't think it really matters. But in the context of his history, as you mentioned, and the fact that he's on C9, that part matters because like you represent way more. Like if some random wrote that to some random, I don't think it would matter. Like I don't think anyone should ever get banned for writing anything. Maybe like just chat restricted. I think it's just like a message is a message, right? But it's like with his history, like if he doesn't play Worlds, it has to be C9 needs to view it from the point of view where they get a competitive advantage by pulling the plug on something like this. Like if it's the Jojo Pune idea and they think they are better, then they could just fucking throw it.
I mean, I also think that. I think the only reason he should not be playing at Worlds is like Cloud9 themselves were already planning to like replace him. You know, this should not be the one that like pushes that decision. You know, but I also think. I mean, I also saw like a lot of people say that. Because he wrote this, he's for sure like a toxic person within the team, and that's just like not true at all, right? Like I have played with, and even myself, I have written things in solo queue like many years ago that where at the same time I would never like, I mean, I would be like a good teammate, you know. This has like nothing to do with each other, right? This is like, I mean, writing something, I kind of agree with I saw like what he posted on Twitter. I mean, I agree with the message. It was just like not the right situation for it. I agree with the fact that as a professional, it really fucking sucks to not be able to like just have to take shit all the time in solo queue.
Yeah.
Because people can get away with it and you can't get away with saying anything back. Like that part of it fucking sucks, of course. Like you would never have like a football player have to play like queue up and like play practice with like some fucking random shitters that just call you like names and they know how you fucking look like, they know your career history and shit like that. You don't know anything about them, you just have to sit and take it because you get banned, right? Like I agree with that. I agree that fucking sucks, but this was like just not the right situation for it, I guess.
Yeah, it's like I can agree with the notion that it blows, but it's also like part of the job, right? It's like you are in the eye of public scrutiny, and I think in most cases, like that's the only reason we get paid for the job, right? Is because there's enough eyeballs, and those eyeballs are gonna use anything against you or for you, right? So it's like that's what you get paid for, Emenes. So I'm curious. I'm assuming that this is just gonna be forgotten like very soon. I just figured that I'd bring it up because it was kind of funny that they pulled the go back to your country after he's played in like Turkey and Europe and NA. And then,
I mean, also like some people, I guess like final for me, like some people were saying it was like he is racist for saying stuff like this, but like I mean, like no one is like racist for saying go back to Europe, you know? This is like a whole fucking region, you know? He didn't call him like he didn't say anything about his country or where he's like he just said fucking Europe, you know? I mean,
he said country specifically, but I think I understood it as like
I thought he said like he said like disgusting EU streamer or something. No, that was like what I meant. Like, like European streamer. Like I mean, I don't put that much weight in it.
No, for
in
sure.
that sense.
Agreed. I think the final thing is, did you see the game? Like I think if anything, I could imagine that he's annoyed that the guy is like in the lobby playing Pantheon because the way
the solo queue game itself, or
because the way the game kind of played out, I don't see what he could have really done too much, because the clip starts from like he's like level 4, he's like bouncing out against Kesante, and Kesante is like contesting in like 2 waves. Kindred is there, he W's on the Kindred is out, and the wave slow pushing out, he's playing like Flash Ignite. Then he bases, comes back, and then Kesante gets 6 and just ults him under the turret. Kindred stayed, and then he's playing Pantheon, and he's kind of fucked. So he just couldn't really play the game anymore.
I didn't see the game, but that was also why I said it's like probably the wrong like situation that he's stressed out about, you know? Because I think like flaming people for like underperforming, that's just like, I mean, then if they're this bad, then they're probably at some point gonna fall out of your elo, right, or something like this. But I think it more applies to when they are like, well, for one inting, but also like writing to you, you know. Then it's like it gets like a little bit more annoying, right? But I assume like from seeing like some spear shot stuff that he didn't like, he doesn't strike me as like the guy who uses chat a lot, or
no, he's no Yamato's death. He's cool.
Yeah,
he's cool. For sure. I was curious, you know, this whole thing, how like considering this has been a wild year for you, Wunder. Really wild. It feels almost strange when I try to think back of Winter and to consider that this has been like the same year. Does it feel surreal to you at all?
I mean, like honestly, I only played what's like on stage 3 weeks, right? Until we got knocked out in Winter. I guess before that we had like maybe like 3 weeks of practice, I guess. So like 1.5 months, something like this, of like playing with the team. And I mean we had like a lot of fucking issues. And I mean all of this like happening, and then like I feel like a lot of people thought I was like because I did leave the team, or I didn't want to participate in the tryouts, like all of this, I assume like most people know. But I didn't like leave the team on like there was like no bad blood, you know. It was just like, okay, we went our opposite ways.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people were like surprised when I decided to like help them out. I mean, I still what is it called? I still have like friends on the team, like Ivan and Marek, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, and I guess it was like a good opportunity for me, possibly. I mean, there was like a lot of risk involved coming back with like limited practice, but it worked out. So
I think it was like good business for both sides, right? I think they should. They are unlucky in the fact that like the whole Oscarinin thing played out. I'm kind of curious if the story ever comes out, but it's not gonna come from me. What happened?
Yeah,
it's like the top lane was probably the best role to break your hand in, if you had to pick a role, because it's like
yeah, probably
because you were already there, right? And then it's like maybe after you, maybe probably it's like you would consider like Bwipo, and I see both of you as like people that could view a situation like this and really find a way to slot yourself in. It's like you are very pragmatic and reasonable, and I think that you are very, very adaptable. I think if it happened in any other position, like if Humanoid like broke his hand, I think like the run would just end right there. It's like,
yeah. I mean, it obviously depends on what kind of replacement you can get. Like for example, let's say if AD was the one who needed to get replaced, but you have like a really like mechanically good AD that can just like, then of course it's not that bad either. But besides that, I think probably top lane is like the easiest to just stop in, unless your team really like heavily relies on like a certain. I mean, unless the top laner is way worse, of course, which in fact like then you can't compete at all, right? Or if your team like, I mean, in this method, no team is probably like that. But if you really heavily rely on your top laner doing something special that not many people can do,
No, of course.
But yeah.
In terms of just to give you the full chance to clarify completely, it's like you not continuing in spring. It's like I know that you didn't do tryouts, right? And is it something you want to share in terms of why you chose to step down and to take a step back?
Yeah, I mean, of course, there's like a lot of. I think back then, like let's say when winter ended, we had like a long conversation, both one-on-ones and also as a team, of like what went wrong and like what we wanted to change and all this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's no secret that. I mean, I guess it is kind of maybe not a lot of people know, but I was not really enjoying working with like the coaching staff.
Yeah.
And also like and some of the decisions that were made around that, and also bot lane. Like there's no secret that bot lane was like a really huge issue. Not in terms of like what is it called, like attitude or anything. It was just didn't work. Like
yeah.
I mean, there was just like a lot of issues, gameplay related mostly. But then of course, like when you have issues, it also becomes like not personal, but of course it affects like everyone in different ways. And I gave like, well, I basically just asked that we could make some changes, right? I think even before the split started, like the year started, I was really trying to get Miki and Hansama to join, right?
Yes.
And I think for sure we made downgrades in bot lane from 2022 to 2023. But I also think that some of the dynamics we had before that also needed to change. So it was like a necessary thing, but just not the best execution, I guess, on the roster changes. But I think like after that, after winter, something had to change, and I said it. But then when I got basically there was like a 2-week downtime period where like I felt like there was like no communication. Like we were just staying in Berlin. We heard like rumors of tryouts that were supposed to happen. But I kept like asking around like to the players on the team and also the managers and all this kind of stuff to like give some kind of information, like who's participating in the tryouts, when are they gonna be, like are we supposed to go home and then come back, because we were just staying like for no reason, doing nothing. And then like I heard the rumored roster, and I felt like nothing was gonna change. Like basically it was not like an upgrade, maybe it was like side grade maybe a small upgrade, but it was like not anything special at all. And then they also told me that they were gonna try out Oscar, right? And then I was like thinking to myself, if I was a free agent, because basically they put me in a position where if they are considering tryouts for someone in my role, and I just like go into tryouts and grief them because I don't want to be on the team. Like if I was a free agent, I wouldn't actually want to play for this roster, both because we had like issues, but also because there was like no upgrades, right? There was just like side grade, like probably going into spring. So I was like, yeah, if it's possible, I'm gonna sit the tryouts out. You know, like I don't want to participate in them because I don't actually. I would rather take a break than play with this team, both because of like how like the environment was with us losing and all this kind of stuff, but also because of the quality of the team.
Yeah.
And yeah, there were like mixed signals when I said that. I mean, because then I heard like from some people that the tryouts with Oscar was just like a courtesy done because they felt like they needed to reward him for good performances in the ERL, and they actually were never intending on ever replacing me, regardless of how the tryouts go.
Okay.
So they want me to play. And I heard like a lot of stuff, right? And I was like, yeah. I mean, I basically said I already kind of made up my mind. So I mean, I always made it clear to them, if they want me to play, like no matter what, then I'm under contract. Like I'm gonna play for them, right?
Yes.
But then there was also like yeah, but we also want you to change this and make you be aware of this. Like basically trying to maybe like put the blame on me a little bit for how it went in winter, and something they wanted me to change coming into spring, which I thought was completely not fair, and also came from said coaching staff that I guess like wanted to replace anyways. So I felt like it like kind of like had no weight, the words that were said to me, and it was like just yeah, it kind of made me like a little bit like unsure about me actually wanting to continue.
I see.
And that's basically everything summed up. I mean, there was a lot of like miscommunication or just like radio silence for like some days, and I guess that made it like a little bit harder to kind of like, I guess, make everything clear. Yeah.
So basically, like you figured with the roster changes that a lot of most of the problems would just carry over from winter to spring, and Fnatic basically offered you an out, and you thought, okay, I'm gonna take
I mean
out
if that like that's like the TLDR, I guess.
Yeah.
That if they give me like a possibility, an option to not continue, to discontinue, and I'm not like too stoked about both the lineup and like how the potential, because Winter was like complete depression for a lot of reasons, and I would rather not play than go through that, you know. So that was like my out, I guess, in a way.
Of course. And from the point of view of you taking a split off for essentially, I guess, the first time ever, right? It's like you've always been very, very busy. I guess the like largest chunk of time has been like those like years where you didn't qualify to the World Championship, where you've had the most time off. But even then, it's like you've scrimmed with McDonald's teams and so forth. How did that feel looking at the LEC from the outside for the first time ever since 2016?
Yeah, it was. I mean, honestly, it was kind of fun the first split, I think. I mean, having a break, just like, I mean, I still got like the jitters, you know, like when it was the weekends, and I was like watching game one, you know, because usually in G2 and Fnatic we always had like the late games.
Yes.
So like watching the first game from like your normal setup PC would be pretty normal, right? Like you just do that before you go to the studio or whatever. So I would always be like I could feel like I would get like a small like heart rate increase, that now it's almost my time to go on stage for the weekend. But it was still kind of fun to just like watch everything and not actually get to participate. But I think in the summer split, like the latest split, I got kind of bored of doing nothing.
Yeah.
And also I wanted to. I mean, I still want to compete, and also I felt like at least like top lane, some of these people they were not performing as good, and I thought I could do better. So there was like a lot of things, like a lot of emotions about like not playing. But I feel like the break has been nice anyways. At least like when I then now came back in for Fnatic, I was like a lot more chill. And of course, it's not my like if I lost a 1 with Fnatic, it wouldn't have mattered for my participation at Worlds, because I was not going to play at Worlds anyways. So I don't have as much, I guess, like in it as maybe they do, because they have been working the entire split for it. So maybe that would also make me a bit more chill. But I think just like the break or like the time off has made me like, yeah, I would not join in on getting tilted in scrims. If people were getting tilted, I would just like smile and brush it off,
Yeah, it's weird on my end now. It's like this is the first year where I haven't competed for the full year. It's like the longest time I was off was like one split, and then I joined LCK that same year. It's it has felt it feels like I finally had the time to think through how I want to work and what I need to improve on, and like just to take a step back and gain like perspective. Because I feel like when you're in the midst of it, everything kind of goes by so quickly, where every day you just have to be on in a way where it's like the focus becomes almost sometimes tunnel vision unless you stop yourself, which can be good to tunnel vision because you need to win every single game. But in terms of that type of thought process, like watching the LEC top lanes from outside, are you beginning... Has your mind, did you begin to imagine what you need to do to come back into the LEC in a form that is going to exceed maybe the Wunder peak of past?
I thought about it for sure, yeah. I mean, I was planning, I am still in like 4 days gonna go to Korea as well, right? And I was planning to like play, of course, like there's still like a few months from when the next split starts. But yeah, I was planning to put in more work. Of course, like there's the big meme about like playing solo queue and all that, but just like in general, I think, scrims have always been like very draining for like a lot of people, right? It's like a fact when if scrims are not going well in your team, then you're probably less likely to stay after scrims and play like a lot of solo queue or just stay around in the office. Like I remember like Fnatic, like for, well, I was gonna say 2 years now, but at least like last year when we were there, and if scrims weren't going well, like people would just peace out. And this is like very normal for a lot of teams. But yeah, I was gonna already now know that like regardless of what happens, just like put in the hours in the office, like if it is to watch games, talk about the games, or like just play. I think everything kind of like benefits. And yeah, of course, like there's also individual things for like in-game related stuff, but I think that's like the big one when it comes to just, I guess, approach to the season.
Like scrims is something that I've thought about probably the most out of any topic now that I've had time off. I think, especially in the context of what we went through, I think there's so many things that need to be in place before you actually scrim. And I think on our end, when certain things weren't in place, when it was like, for example, individual play or maybe there was draft misalignment, it's like you are going in, it's like in theory, essentially what you would do is that in order to prepare for a test, you just keep repeating a similar test and hope that this is the best way of practicing, but essentially it's like there's so much things that can be done before scrims, because how many games are wasted because someone dies level 3 or doesn't know the matchup, or there's a concept that someone doesn't understand and you butt your heads, and then you have to use a little timing window of 10 to 15 minutes to unravel so much more. But in reality, if things are broken down, and there's so many more different ways to practice and prepare for scrims rather than just trying to solve everything through scrims. And I feel like 2022 for us, it's like we started so damn late, and then we just jumped into scrims, and then everyone had different ideas of what the hell should be going on. And when you have players that are less vocal or have kind of predisposed opinions about one another, those things begin to fester, and then you begin to create habits and a culture of, let's say, something that you necessarily don't believe in. And then when you are too far down the line, you end up trying to just maintain what you have rather than trying to build something more, because that's how our summer split kind of ended up. So on the topic of like scrims, in terms of what you believe how scrims should be set up, is this something that you've thought about more? I know that we had discussions back in 2022, but I remember there were times where we just said, yo, currently this player is underperforming. We need to take the time to he needs to take the time to get his shit together. Right now, there's no point in scrimming. We did pull some of those on occasion, which I think was the correct decision.
I think, I mean, on the top of scrims, it's always hard to say because you kind of have to judge the group that you're with. Like, I think for us, it was like, of course, like I always think like being prepared for scrims is always better than not being prepared, right? Like knowing your matchups, as you said. Like for example, like right now, as when I subbed in for Fnatic again, right? Like I had like a few select matchups that I was gonna, well, try to get proficient in.
Mm-hmm.
And if I was just playing, like I had basically, I think we had maybe like 5 days of practice. And some of them were even like 1 or 2 games in the green rooms at the arena, right? So it was not even like a big multiple like games. It was just like a few games. And I think if I was gonna like try playing everything and try like every matchups, the scrims wouldn't have been purposeful at all.
Yes.
So I think for sure, like making sure the scrims at least have purpose in the beginning is always good. And of course, like the issues we had in the team was that we had like a lot of veteran players. For example, well, Marek was with Matt, right? Mm-hmm. And Matt was like notorious for having really bad scrims.
Yes.
And I think once you see like signs of it kind of resorting it, like going into the old ways, like for him, probably he was feeling, oh, well, here we go again, like another year of like complete shit scrims. And then you already have like this ingrained in your mind, and then maybe you stop like trying so hard when it comes to scrimming. You are like, okay, well, we'll just have to make it work in the stage games, right? But this all comes down to what kind of people you have on the team. Like there's people as well where if scrims go bad, they like to put it on themselves to fix everything, right? Like for example, I remember when Perks like felt like something was going bad around mid jungle, he would like call over Jankos and they will go over Reap. Like he would be the one who engaged in this kind of stuff. And I think of course like a coach can do this as well. But it means a bit more when like a player is pushing for it, to fix the issues that happens in their in the daily life, right? Which is scrims. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things you can implement. I think for sure something I've thought about was also putting it more on myself to fix issues. There's of course like issues that you can't fix. Let's say like you can try to, but you can't like always be in charge of. Like let's say if your bot lane is running down some certain matchups in 2v2 and that makes Scrims unplayable, you can help them, but you don't have to like go there and like backseat them, you know. This is not what I'm talking about, but you at least like fix the team-wide issues that everyone can participate in. This is something I would probably take more on myself as well next year.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that. Yes, I think I always felt like you, in a strange way, underestimate the impact that you can have on others, because I think your social awareness is extremely like your social intelligence is extremely high. I think that
in esports, yeah, maybe.
I think in probably you wouldn't. I can't imagine that you would want to be, maybe in the future, but I would think that you would be a very, very strong coach one day. When you feel ready.
I thought about it. I mean, I thought about it, but only because going back to school sounds like that sounds like a really, really unfortunate option for me.
You got all that. You can just sell the MSI trophy for millions.
Oh yeah,
I'll do that. Solid gold MSI medal, and then you just tell Promiscu to send his as well, and then you sell two, and it's gonna be great. I think it was now more than ever with the format. I think the time you take before the year starts is so essential, because it's like looking at G2 that year. I didn't think that their roster was that strong. I think BB has made like a very, very strong name for himself and an argument for himself over the last 2 years. But like on paper, in terms of them winning Spring that year, I attribute that to all of the work they did during like the off season in terms of scrimming and in terms of playing, because they were scrimming at Worlds already then, 2021, and I think that preparation combined with alignment of agreeing is that this is how scrims are going to look like, this is the expectations, this is what it means to be a teammate, this is what people believe is important in a team environment. I think making sure that you align on those things is so important, because it's like when we started in 2022, it's like you described Humanoid very, very well in terms of, you know, that coming back to him and dawning on us, oh shit, these scrims are going to fucking suck and this is going to be draining. And I think on the flip side, for example, Hilly, he's a very slow starter. Like he needs to run it down for sort of 3 weeks before he gets into his form. And in those 3 weeks, if he feels signs of like someone losing trust, or then he will begin to fight a little bit more. And I think that that's like a part of Hilly's process, right? Because in the end, I understand from his point of view why he would continue doing what has worked for him very, very long, right? Because it's like, in the end, he has had a very strong history of like making finals almost like pretty much on every team that he's been on, right? With UL, Mad Lions, with Fnatic, like he's figured out the formula that works for him. And you mentioned it's like we have a group of veterans, and then Razork coming, of course, from Misfits with a very specific environment of him being like in a team gaming house, and then moving into a situation where there's an office and not having that level of familiarity in the group. It's like it was a big change up for everyone, and I think if you don't have those conversations, everyone's going to resort to what has worked for them in the past, and that's not always going to be true in the context of every dynamic, right? It's like what you were in a specific team is not going to be optimized for a different team, right? I think for you specifically, I think that you are very, very adaptable. And as I mentioned before, it's like you have very high social intelligence, which I think is crucial, because you need to like notice signs and knowing how to like communicate with people. I think this makes it a lot easier to navigate such dynamics. But I think this was like a very big pain point for us in 2022, that we like 1 week before the split starts, we are scrimming, and then we just jump into scrims and expect scrims to just reveal to us all of the things that we needed to do. It was such a strange year.
No, for sure. And I mean, it's true to the G2 point that like a reason why they were like a big reason of why they were so good is like for sure that they started a lot earlier, and had this entire like process, right? And also they were all in. I'm pretty sure they were all in Berlin at that time as well. Like they were actually in house doing it. And yeah, I mean, also the fact that, I mean, it's gonna sound wrong because like no one wants to lose scrims, but I think there are players that like as I said, they fight harder to, like they're less content with just losing scrims, you know.
Yes,
like,
yes.
And I think G2 has, like for example, Jankos and Caps from playing with them, like they are less happy just losing scrims, you know, than some other players, and that's I guess like also a big reason of why like G2 did and does well in scrims so much, right? I think, for example, G2 2019, we were like, no one was happy with losing scrims. We did lose scrims a lot either, but the games we did always were like, we took a lot harder than I guess most other teams I've been on. And like try to figure out how to not repeat it, you know. And I think just some players are better at doing that than others. And I don't think in the Fnatic 22 team, I think maybe Opposite in a way took like he didn't want to like lose scrims, as he was not as happy losing scrims as others. But maybe the approach he went about it wasn't always as good either, because of like the dynamic we had within the team. I think in G2 it was a lot more like, it was like a wholesome don't want to lose kind of thing.
Yeah.
And in Fnatic we were just not there yet, like as a team, personality wise, I guess. It was more about like, this is our job, let's take it serious, you know.
Yes.
Which it should be as well, of course. There's like just a balance, I think, that depends on what team you're in.
No, I think it's like Upset's competitiveness is also something that needs to be like aligned on, right? Because it's like he came in with the same idea that we had from the previous year, and then it was like Bwipo and him were really like a driving force together with Hilly in terms of like really getting the most out of scrims, and like the conversations were really engaged regardless of what the outcome was. And I think when anyone feels like what they're doing is important and productive, I think anyone feels good. I think that's like essentially it, right? And I think that's like that was like the additional layer of the Fnatic 2022 cake was, it's like Hilly having a slow start, Humanoid having the past memories dawning on him, and you know, having a more nihilistic view, and then Upset wanting to win scrims, and then due to the circumstance we're not winning scrims, and there's just a perfect storm of, guys, we should probably take an extra break day, and then we're gonna claw our way through through summer.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, of course, like there are always teams like this. Like, we were a team like that in 2022. Matt has like seemingly always been a team like that. Unicorns of Love like used to be a team like that, like where they, I mean, scrimming against, like there are just always teams where scrimming against someone and they give you worse practice than maybe some ERL teams would even do, you know. And then on stage they show up different, and it just works out for them. But I don't think any player, like as I said, would actually want to be like, the day-to-day on a team like that just sucks a lot more than if you were just, it was a lot more productive and you were not necessarily winning scrims, but yeah, just the productivity was just like a lot better, because there's like no way that any of these teams got like a lot more value out of those scrims than teams who were maybe winning a bit more, just taking it a bit more serious.
Yep. Oh, it's like the story of Matt that Humanoid pretty much shared. It's like, for the longest time, for as long as I remember, Matt was always the team that was running it down in scrims. But it seemed like they figured out ways to learn differently. It's like they just sat down and reviewed games of teams that they look up to and that they believe are playing like similar in a way what they want to achieve, and then they just sat down, had conversations about it. I think there's many ways to improve as a team that can happen outside of scrims. And in my mind, if there was a circumstance similar to 2022, it's like we would scrim less but find different ways of just improving together. I think that's essential, and then using that to carry momentum over into practice, so it feels like there is true intent behind it, rather than going into scrims knowing that you have a plethora of issues and hoping that you can like bang them out one by one by reviewing every single detail. I'm curious, Wunder, for 2019 G2, it's like the stars fucking aligned, right? The stars aligned in terms of the form of everyone individually. The work that you guys put in and the idea that you guys had before the team was formed, how clear was that? Was it just about you guys just being homies and the whole meet people at the pool and just I want to play with this guy, I want to play with this guy, I think this guy is really good? Or was it more let's say articulate than that?
I mean, it's been like a long time ago, so I don't think there's like any issue of me saying like pretty much everything. But as far as, I mean, I might not have been involved in everything, but as far as I'm concerned, it was already 2018. You know what we actually talked about before, like when we lost to Misfits, we had like in summer quarters, we had like a 4 or 5 week break until we were supposed to play Gauntlet. And already, like shortly after losing, I remember me, Perks, and Jankos going to like an ice cream place or something, and Perks was like floating a lot of ideas of like what we needed to change within the team, and mostly roster stuff, right?
Yes.
And even back then, he was like, I think he was open for. I don't remember the exact options we had, but he was open for going 80 as long as we could get like a really, really good mid laner, right?
Okay.
And if it was not for that, then it was like, where I remember maybe it was something about getting maybe Sven back, or like some other good 80s at the time. So there was like a lot of options. Maybe there was some importing as well, but I don't actually quite remember. But it already started back then. And I guess like regardless of, because then we made it to Worlds and like all of this, I think the plans were already kind of in motion that next year was, the next year was going to be different, because regardless of, this was like the best result back then that G2 had gotten internationally, but at the same time domestically it was like in our region we kind of didn't perform as good. Like we made finals once, but then we got knocked out in quarters. And yeah, hopefully you can like get the best of both worlds, right? Like winning EU and also winning worlds or getting far at worlds, right? Like either or. And yeah, Caps like in 2018 was, I don't remember the exact games, but at least like in the finals we played against him, he played really good. And he was like also in the playoffs they played in summer 2018 where we got knocked out. He was like for sure like the best performing mid laner.
It was the Vayne. The Vayne.
Yeah, there was the Vayne stuff. But then there was also like, I remember I guess, I don't know. I don't actually know exactly what he played, but he played really well. And yeah, for, I think actually there was like some kind of package deal with Caps and Mickey, because I think maybe Caps and Mickey wanted to play together even at that time. And they wanted to go, like they were like exploring different options. And I of course knew Mickey, and I thought Mickey was really good. And he was probably pretty undervalued because of his year in Misfits at the time.
Thing, getting benched by Jessus.
He was even like benched, and like Jessus stopped in for him. This could not have been like a good year for Mickey, like in the eyes of the public, So I think, well, and because we all wanted to play with them, and they were like decent options. Like Caps had like a really shit contract from Fnatic when he first signed. I was like on low pay. Jankos was, I think maybe, I don't know the exact numbers, but I assume that since Perks was like the long-standing G2 member, he was like on a decent contract. But we were not like the most expensive team to get, and we all wanted to play with each other. And in the beginning, I mean, like, the what is it called? Like Caps and Perks role swapping was like a little bit crazy, but I think we like got the two best mid laners, and one of them just went AD, and maybe it will work out.
Yeah, okay. Like you mentioned that at the ice cream place, that Perks was floating the idea of going AD, and you mentioned that if he gets a really good mid laner, was there anyone beyond Caps that was considered?
Well, not within Europe.
Okay.
And I don't remember exact names, but there possibly was some importing stuff that was also like in our minds. But within Europe, it was always like Caps or nothing, basically.
Okay.
At least, yeah.
I see. Okay. And in regards to, it's like, in terms of, I guess Perks' method has been to just assemble the Avengers, because he G2 wanted you for the longest time, right? It's like already after 2016. It's like even in the finals against Expect, you're devouring him.
Yeah, I mean, like poaching stuff and all that, like aside, I mean, now it's like a lot of years ago, right? Like there's a lot of stories about this. I mean, I could give you like the entire poaching. I mean, everyone knows like the Sven and Mithy poaching that happened.
Yeah.
And then after that, like the culture basically in LEC, with the old format and everything, was that you had your 2 games on the weekend, and then everyone went like to the same place, to the same bars, like this kind of stuff.
Yes.
And I just remember like in 2016 already, after the splits, I had an offer to join G2, which I ended up turning down, which in hindsight was like a little bit of a mistake. But yeah, I mean, already then, like Trick, I remember Trick was like jumping up and down, screaming like G2 Wunder, G2 Wunder, and like all this kind of stuff, you know, like please join G2, please join G2. And then like, of course, like I was good friends with, I mean, I don't know if I would call it good friends, but I was talking with all of these people, right, from G2 as well. Because as I said, everyone was going like to the same places, doing the same things pretty much every weekend. And yeah, I mean, and then, I mean, I didn't join them, but then in 2018, when I joined, and then in 2019, when Caps and Miki joined, all of these teams were like really, I think it was actually led by Youngbuck. And then he got, because he was like good friends with Dylan, like the Blacklist stuff.
Yeah.
They were like spearheading the Blacklist stuff because they were really tired of, I guess, G2 poaching every player. Like it started
sick
because
of G2 winning. Okay.
Sick of G2 winning, but sick of like, I guess what made everything float over was like us getting Caps, right? And then we basically got blacklisted by every LEC team, or they were trying to form a union where like, if you break out of this union, I mean, you were there as a coach, of course, so you know.
Yeah.
But if you break out of this union and you scrim G2, you're gonna be blacklisted too, basically. So this was just like us scrimming for the first 3 weeks, ERL teams basically, and just Turkish teams. I guess there was not.
We scrimmed you guys. We scrimmed you guys.
Yeah, I think you guys were the first one to start scrimming, but it was not before LEC had started. I think it was. Like before LEC started, we had like no LEC scrims, or maybe before the blacklist happened. But during the blacklist, I think it was only after LEC started that people started scrimming us.
Because it was so absurd, you know. It's like when I spoke to Young, I was like, there was like one team that didn't agree, and they were scrimming them anyway. I was like, so what are the repercussions? What are we doing here? It's like, yeah, but we think it's good. I'm like. Pfft. It's like, okay, and then we had like these barcode names. We just you guys with barcode names.
So you guys went on like secret accounts because I mean back then, I mean you can still kind of see who's in the lobby. Given like someone who gets like lobby leader, basically you can see who's kind of scrimming each other.
Yeah.
So you guys went on like barcode accounts, so no one knew you were actually scrimming us. But I think it was not before we were like 6-0 in LEC, because I kind of remember that distinctly, that teams actively just started playing us, like without hiding the fact that they were playing us, which only a few teams did. But yeah, basically we were like 6-0 or 8-0, I think, before teams actually started scrimming us. That split.
I think it might have been that we played you guys in week 2. You remember that game when you played Camille top against Javan?
Yeah.
And I think Caps was playing Lissandra. And then like we were far ahead and we just threw the game, which was like the story of our life against you guys. It's like far ahead, dive you a couple of times and then lose the whole game.
Yeah, I remember the Pike Yumi as well.
Oh shit, you playing Yorick. Oh yeah. And then Jace can't re-enter top turret. I remember this all too well. 5 people chasing Pike, whole map.
Yeah, that was fun actually.
Oh shit.
It's good times.
I have some PTSD. God bless you. You gave us a win with your Garen on 5. Someone had a sign in the crowd. It's like Wunder, big Garen or whatever the fuck it was.
Yeah, I don't even know. I guess it was because of the sign actually. I don't even know like why that happened or what happened actually, but I guess maybe that's why.
You guys were definitely like a vibe. Did everything just click, or did you guys like talk at the end of the season? It's like, yo, we're gonna fucking win everything, and this is the plan, or was everyone just that good and that aligned naturally from who you guys are as people?
I mean, I think from 2018 we all kind of clicked. Like me, like the top side of us, I guess, back then.
Yeah.
Like we were all like really competitive, and I mean, we all wanted to win. And I guess like personality-wise, we were like getting along, you know. And I mean, I knew from bringing in Mickey that he would be able to fit in this. The only one I didn't know too well was Caps. But as I said, like Mickey wanted to play with Caps and Caps wanted to play with Mickey. And I mean, Perks knows a lot more people back then and still does than I do, like personality wise. And he felt like Caps would be a good fit as well. And it turned out to be, I mean, it's like all very wholesome, but still everyone like being really competitive and wanting to win, right? And I think, I mean, there's not anything special about that. I mean, a lot of teams have this, but we were just all really good at the game as well. I guess that's a bonus. And knowledgeable about the game, I guess, as well, comparatively, like just creativity wise and everything like this, and also about how we approach practice was just like a lot. I mean, we were like really free to do whatever we wanted, and I guess the meta also kind of suited us in us being able to just like experiment with a lot of weird shit.
And then I guess it seems like so the story is like Park started assembling the Avengers. He wanted you early on. Maybe there's a timeline where Wunder joins G2 2017 and maybe Sven and Mithy would have stayed, and maybe that would have been like the super roster earlier on, 2018 already. Sven, Mithy, Wunder, Jankos and Perks. Maybe that's something that could have happened, and maybe the timeline would have played out different, because I imagine if that would be the roster 2018, then like the timeline would have played out completely different. But back then it's like joining TSM was still like a little bit more.
It was still a thing, yeah.
It was still a thing. It was a bit more extravagant. It's like you saw the roses. Oh, I'm gonna stream and have 10k viewers. Björksen is insane. So maybe they still would have gone in that direction. But it's interesting to speculate how things might have played out different. Maybe Caps would have stayed on Fnatic, and now the Fnatic fans, they are like, holy shit, I wish this happened, you know.
Yeah, I mean, my reasoning for, I mean, it was both like usually, like I've never in my career like really played for like, I mean, of course I want to get like paid well, but I have never like, it's never been like my main focus. And this is also why G2 actually stayed together for as long as we did, because we signed like a lot worse contracts than we could have, just on the basis of us like staying together.
Yes.
But I guess like the reasons that I didn't go G2 earlier was also the fact that, well, I got along well with my boys in Splice, you know, and we had like a really good trajectory, I guess, because I mean we went from relegation to basically making worlds within our first year, and G2 kind of collapsed at worlds in a way easier group than we were in. Then also my pay for playing would be a lot worse than it would have been if I stayed in Splice. So like all these things factored together made me want to give it like another shot, like another year in Splice. But of course, like in hindsight now, going to G2 with like the Sven and Mitty, who were like, I mean, Kobe and Mickey were for sure the second best bot lane. But throughout the years, Sven and Mitty was like a better performing and more consistent, I guess. So like going to that team would have for sure in hindsight been a lot better, probably. I don't know if, maybe like the super team would have never happened and all of this, and then you can make that argument. But yeah, I mean, that's, I guess, like my main reasoning for not going earlier to G2, even though I had the chance to.
I remember we actually had a conversation about it, and I remember that you asked me what I would do. And
you told me to take it.
Like I wanted to keep you because like you were by far the best top lane in Europe. I don't think there was a conversation about it. It's like think so, as if I remember correctly, I don't know if he had moved to NA. I think that there was like the origin year, like the downfall after losing Sven and Mithy. Him and like Amazing and Forgiven, like they had like a really, really rough time. Trying to remember who else was in the mix. I think that you were like undisputed.
In 2016, I mean, honestly, in summer, because in spring, of course, it's a different story. But in summer, I felt like who even got like, I mean, All Pro is like a meme and all, but I think like honestly, Smitty J didn't even have like a bad split. I think he was pretty good. I was always like very confident against him though. Like I always performed really well against him, but against other people he played against, I remember he was like performing really well. Vishichachi was like one of the top ones for sure.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably it. I mean, Odo was like decent, I think, but he was for sure a lot better in spring from what I remember than he was in summer. I mean, honestly,
like,
I mean, you always have to think.
HK, right? It's like he refuses to pick Naren to you because he's afraid of the Irelia that didn't exist.
Yeah, I mean, you always have to think that you are like good, right, and have confidence in yourself. And it's gonna sound like cocky and everything, but I think every player should think that to some extent. But like I generally I thought for sure I was the best in 2016 at the end of the year. But even in the years that I didn't get to Worlds, like in 2017, I thought I was still like, I mean, I don't think you just magically...
to 5 games, right? It's like you almost fucking 1v9 that with Mickey. You guys played the Camille Morgana shit.
Yeah.
And then
I hear a lot of people saying about like, for example, like a lot of people like to rewrite history, you know, like for example, 2020, people say that I was like so much worse than 2019, and maybe I was worse, you know, but I still remember like getting like 50 CS leads in matchups that were not even winning, you know, and shit like this, and I was just thinking to myself, like, did people even watch like the games and stuff like this, you know, like, but yeah, I mean, for sure in 2016, I think it was, I don't think top lane was that strong though, because I don't think I should have been the best top laner in Europe, but it just turned out to be that way, I guess.
I was like, I'm trying to think back. It's like Vitality was supposed to be stronger, right, coming into summer, and like Cabo was a strong performer. Like Odon like was on H2K, and that was like a very bot-centric team, like with how Forgiven liked to play, especially after like the lane swap thing stopped. It's like we were very sweaty like lane swap abusers, because we couldn't really piece together how to like use jungle well together with anyone else but you, because you're very good at communicating with Trashy at the time. And I remember like Senkooks and Trashies, like whenever they tried to find timings together, it was problematic. And Mickey and Koba at the time, they weren't the most demanding players. They were rather going with the flow. We were lane swapping the shit out of everything. No, I think anyone who it's like even 2020, it's like regionally, you guys were absolutely dominating. It's like I don't think there was like maybe that one Rogue series that was close, but even that game 5 was like super one-sided, where like Larson had probably like one of the best series
or something.
It might have been, yeah.
I remember like I think it was a series where I was like playing Shen like 70 CS against Aatrox with 20 or something.
It might have been, yeah. 2020.
Yeah. I think it was 2020. Yeah.
You played Shen into Aatrox. And you were 50 CS up. I feel like
I remember playing like
this game.
I remember I was playing like Kale into Ornn as well, and I was like 100 CS up, and I lost the game. It was like shit like this, you know. But maybe that's just like my bias. I don't know too well. I mean, even like for basically people are making it sound like I was washed, you know. But I guess they don't. I guess people just forget that I was at Worlds last year, you know, and I feel like even though for sure comparatively to like the field or whatever, I'm not as dominant as I was in maybe like 2019. Like I still like, and the team was maybe the team I've been in was a little bit more dysfunctional, like Fnatic 2022 than G2 2019 as well. Like everything adds up, of course, but like I still played like into Zeus, and I didn't get fucked, you know. I was just.
You were winning pretty hard Aatrox into Jax, I remember.
Yeah.
And then it's like we were in the split map, right? And it's like they allowed us to get Fnatic Exodia draft with the Papushka, but like
but that's what I mean. I mean, the narrative ends like it like changes really fast, you know. Like
yes.
I can play Aatrox into like 4 months ago. I play Aatrox into Jax against Zeus, or even like 3 months ago, and then 3 months after, I'm McGregor's OTP, you know. It's like I mean, that's just how it is, I guess.
No, for sure. I can feel that. It's like 2021 is kind of a blur to me. I think it's like I remember our best of 5.
It's a blur to me as well.
2021, it's like I just remember like our best of 5, where it's like you were playing against Adam, right? And it's like even that. Like that Darius Camille matchup, like it was fucking paper thin that it could have gone the other way in that all in, right? Like that was insanely close. But in regards to like the block of 16 to 2020, I think that in Europe you were pretty fucking undisputed. You know, it's like Bwipo tried and Fnatic tried, but the way the series always played out in the end, it's like It seemed as if Bwipo, like at least when watching those series, it seemed like Bwipo was playing in a way where he felt the need to compensate for something, and you would just break him apart because of it.
To me, it always kind of felt like, I mean, again, like maybe it will sound cocky or something, but it always felt like when I watched, like for example, when I talked like about the Smitty J thing in 2016, like he was always performing really well against other people, but then when it came to when I played against him, it was always a lot different, and that's kind of the same with Bwipo. There was for sure games where he played well, like even against me, like he was by no means like choking against me every single
Jack's
time. You know?
Games that were good, I remember.
Yeah, like I'm not saying that he was like inting every single game, but he was maybe in some games carrying harder against other teams than maybe I would have, you know, and in that sense. Maybe it looks like it was competitive, but I would say on the average, when then I played against them, it was like it was a different story, you know.
Like you have like the Zac and the Ornn mirror matchup series.
Yeah, for example, I guess that's the infamous one. Yeah,
I remember there was one game where somehow he was playing Akali into you, and you're playing Kled, and he was getting slammed. It seemed like Fnatic. Obviously, it's like playing against you guys during that era. You come in with an awareness that you're worse. So sometimes either you're in a position where you're going to try too hard to achieve things that are not achievable, and you try to squeeze where you shouldn't squeeze, and it plays out in like a very certain way. Because it felt at the time like unless you guys gave the way to a victory by your own admission, you guys didn't seem beatable. Like we got the Garen gift. I remember that was like the regular split game that you guys played against Fnatic, where like Caps was laning top and got like solo killed against Whip, like level 2, because there was like something happening level 1 and then the game just exploded. It seemed like it was always, is G2 gonna give us a win today?
Yeah, I mean, that's always how it kind of felt. Like, I mean, we knew that we could have like disgusting games and BO1s, you know, but we also knew at the same time, and this was like kind of a running thing throughout like pretty much like a lot of it, is that when it came to BO5s, we were really confident that there was basically no way that a team would win 3 games against us, 3 out of 5 games, you know. And this was just like a mentality thing that we had, that we basically felt like coming into it, there's no way this team wins 3 games against us. And that was like basically just our mentality throughout almost every series we ever played.
There was one series, right? But it was the first time we had a double elimination bracket, right? Where you guys lost against Mad Lions. Due to the fact that there's being a double elimination, was that taken just in stride, or was that like followed by a big meeting and a restructuring of what you guys are up to when Caps is playing AD, I believe, with the Ziggs and the
I mean, I think it's always a wake up call, and it's like hard to say if there was no elimination, if this would have been the outcome of the series. But like what I know is that we already knew, even like it didn't have to take more than an hour after the series that we knew we were still gonna win the entire thing, you know. Even after losing, like we had like a lot of confidence basically in each other and ourselves that this was like, we didn't take it in stride. Like we were not happy about the result, but we were also not knocked out by it, you know. Like we were ready to keep going.
Yeah, you guys knew what you guys needed to do, huh?
Yeah, I mean, that's at least like, that's from my personal experience. Of course, I can't speak on behalf of like everyone on the team, but I think like I think that's like overall probably the main takeaway from those series.
Is it fair to say that 2019? Do you feel like this is a year where you improved the most individually due to the nature of the group? Because it seems from outside that. Like looking at that year, I think that was like a fantastic year for everyone individually. Obviously, it helps when a team functions well. But I think a key thing of when a team functions well is that everyone is capable of sharing their knowledge and raising the knowledge ceiling of the team to their own, if they are the ones that understand something better than others. Do you feel like that year you improved a lot, let's say?
I mean, I think I improved more than the other top laners, but I already think, and I don't know if it's the year I improved the most. I think 2018 and 2019 are pretty close, honestly. I mean, of course, like coming in as a fresh player in LEC in 2016, of course, I'm gonna make like a lot of improvement.
Of course.
Like in my first year in LEC, right? But like since then, I mean, I'd say I probably improved a bit more in 2019 than 2018, but I think it's honestly pretty close. Like I was playing with the same top side except Caps, right? Where like Caps and Perks change positions probably between 2018 and 2019. But I think I learned a lot from like both of their ways of playing, and kind of how to fit within it. I mean, they were both like number 1 and 2. Like you can flip them around, right? Depending on the month or like even what champ they were playing. Like they were pretty undisputed, I guess, like at least like first and second mid lane. And I think Jankos was I mean, I don't actually think me and Jankos had like the most insane like synergy or whatever you want to call it. Like we were not like we didn't like depend on each other as much. But then again, I've also heard, like, for example, I heard like Bwipo say like a long time ago that playing against me and Jankos was like the hardest thing because of our duo. But I just think we just all played the game really well, and there was like not like we just said what we had to say, but usually it was also pretty easy to play because if someone was struggling for whatever reason, you had like you could rely on like someone else to step it up and like maybe even help you out or just carry the game or like find ways where you could be useful. You know, I think that's like probably the most important thing we had was like our creativity to always be useful, like regardless of what situation we were in the game. So it was always hard to play against us, I feel like, because of that.
It seems to me, I felt like playing against you guys and watching you guys from outside, it seemed that previous years of League, I think, were rather static, where a lot of teams were very sharp at playing the same circumstances over and over again. It's like the meme of Korean League of Legends and so forth. I felt like you guys were capable of seeing past that super well and just understanding the conditions of the game and what you needed to do in the game better than anybody else. And I felt like the both of your best of fives against T1 was a testament to that, because they were very rigid in the way they played. If they got to play the same drafts over and over and they were put in circumstances that they recognized, I still believe that in that context, that was a really, really fucking insane team. But in terms of how you guys seem to always play, is that you thrived in whatever chaos was created because you guys seemed so fluid in how you kind of view the game. Like, I could imagine that group of players, with you in it, of course, that you guys could be dropped into a random game at 15 minutes, press tab and realize what you need to do regardless of what champ you guys were playing.
Yeah, I mean, I think we, like, for sure we understood the game really well. And I mean, a lot of people, how they describe playing against us was basically that we would play really good up until the point that when people would usually reset for tempo or stuff like that, we would like tend to like trap or stay, or like some people base, some people stay. And I think we were just really good at playing. I think we were good at playing the game, but also good at playing our champions more creatively. And I think that's one of the things, like even today, for example, I mean, when I played with Humanoid just now a week ago, he is like really, really, like he's a really insane laner, right? Like he always gets the good leads, the control matchups, like, and all of this. But I think the edge that caps us is that on the champs that allow you to be creative, he just finds like the angles that people don't usually find. And I think we were all kind of like that in G2. Like we would play the game, but we would also play our champions within the game, right? Like some games Caps would sit in a bush as a Kali for 1 minute. I mean, there was like a really in situation when he did it.
Yeah.
Or like sometimes we would just do stuff that felt right within the game without feeling like we, of course, like within the limits of not like losing a random tier 2 tower or some shit, or losing Nash. But we would, like, for example, if we were playing like Rise top or something, I would go and shadow Caps on bot, or he would do the same if he was playing Rise, and we would like take the tower and Rise ult to Nash, something like this, like we were kind of like breaking the game within the limits of our champions a bit more than a lot of other people, I think, where like everyone else just plays like conventional regardless of what draft you have, and then it's kind of just better draft wins, at that point.
Yes. Do you think that League has moved heavier in that direction? Because in my mind, it's like you guys were outliers. I think that it seemed to me that teams took the time to actually study you guys coming into 2020. I think that a lot of that carried over. It's like, especially I noticed, like, me scrimming in Korea and being in Korea, for me, scrimming against Damwon, sometimes you scrim against a team and you just kind of think to yourself, holy shit, this team might just win the world championship. And scrimming against those guys back then, it seemed like I always get the feeling that Asian teams always take a lot of inspiration from teams that are dominant the previous year in regards to how they like to approach things coming into the next year. Because I scrim against Damwon, they were very loose, very free. It's like they're picking very, very unique things. Scrim against everybody else, it would be like everyone would just pick the same shit 5 games straight. If you let them have the same draft, 5 games, same draft. With Scrim against T1, they would just like repeat. Dom will be like loose and free, try random shit, try stuff, see what sticks. Beryl is like picking Pantheon support. At the time, I was like, what the fuck is this? And then it's like Giga Broken, and then it's like they were very, very loose and free in the way they approach the game. And it seems to me that the idea of what G2 was 2019 it becomes much harder and harder to ever replicate, because it seems like everyone's advancing in that direction. Because I think an additional layer of what made you guys so good, I think that the way you guys assess information, which is like crucial nowadays, it's like the baseline. You know, we've had those conversations 2020. It's like, we can't call this, you just need to see it and then act on it. And it's like the way people like posture and soft contest and gain information and then judge like waves in terms of how you need to play and which wave to push, which wave not to push, and where to punish, where not to punish. It seems like 2019 was like the ideal year to really have the G2 roster become what it was. Because it's like if it played out later, the competition just got harder and harder, right? Or
yeah,
I mean, different.
I mean, of course, like it would be unrealistic to say that we could just turn back time and everyone with the knowledge everyone has to play the same way and to do the same, right?
Yeah.
But I also think the game has developed like with patches and stuff to where it's like even harder to maybe do some of the things that we were doing.
The wave thing came after, right? It's like the whole fucking wave thing, waves being stuck and...
Yeah, for example. And also just, I mean, a lot of teams have gotten better at playing around objectives and making the game about like objectives more than...
They're also way buffed, right?
Stuff, right?
Souls and Drakes and Ashes broken.
So there's obviously a lot of things. I mean, I think there are things within that can still be exploited depending on like champions you play and stuff like that, but way less so than in 2019. And yeah, I mean, I think I do think though it is a skill that probably most people have had to learn, is like being good at picking out new champions, right? Because I think for sure there's like a way. It's like actually a skill to be able to know how to do that. I kind of view it like how I view it, and I don't know if people view it like that. Is like, for example, in top lane, like it's a lot about like small concepts. Like there's big ones, but like how to pick up a champion. I usually like to just think about how this champion just works in the game. Like the what is it called? A classic one would be like the 2018 GP Shen, right?
Yes.
Which is like Shen. There's like the big concept, which is Shen. How a lot of teams like to play is if you're on the Shen side, play around the Shen and make sure enemy top has to TP back, because then at 6 you basically have a Shen ult and he doesn't have a TP. This was like a thing people were thinking about. But then there's also the part where like if you're looking into the matchups themselves and just think about it, like this is why I think I can probably go back to 2018 and play this matchup perfectly, you know, on the GP end, because Shen is like Shen was a champion that he didn't have like any wave push at all. He could only like trade and all in, and on GP you could just spam your entire mana bar and stack 3 waves and base, you know, and you could always do that. You could just spam Q on the Shen, so you were like disincentivized, like you like pushed him away and made sure he couldn't fight you when he got level 2, and you could just basically just get a base every single game on 3 waves and get your Sheen, you know. And this is like a way to think about the game that I think most people, at least back then, weren't thinking about it, you know, like the small concepts of like what this champion sucks at, which is pushing out the wave, and what GP is good at is like trading early. And I mean, that's kind of how I thought about most matchups, right, back then. And still sometimes do now, which is why I think it's like it's basically a skill to have as well, that I think a lot of people have had to like train. It's just like being able to not first time matchups, but not be like completely clueless the first time they play them, you know.
Yes. No, I think it's like what it seems to me what you're describing is, it's like actually breaking it down to ideas rather than playing on what makes sense due to what you've done and what you've seen. It's like you're actually breaking it down to something that you can explain to someone.
Yeah, it's basically like, I mean, you're basically playing the matchup. It's like playing chess in your head, you know? You're basically just playing the matchup in your head. And sure, you might sometimes you get it a little bit wrong, but the idea is still there, you know? And like I mean, this is like, it becomes like common sense at some point, but I don't know if it's common sense to everyone, right? That's why I say it, like, for sure, not everyone, because when you go back and look at how people played the matchups, like sometimes it was like, even on LEC level, it was like completely clueless, you know? It was something that if you explained it to like a plat player, he could play the first like 4 minutes better than the LEC player, right? Which is, I mean, kind of weird.
No, for sure. Because it's like usually, like conceptually, matchups can be breaking down to a couple of sentences. Because it's like either you're stronger or you're weaker, or you win the first wave, you convert it into the next step, and then it's like everything kind of branches out. And then within that, of course, there's like nuances. Like if someone's playing like Jax versus Fiora, like I can explain that and saying, Jax wants to keep his HP bar up and keep his stacks of passive up, and needs to keep hitting as Fiora tries to chip away at his HP bar. And it's like that's a very simplified version of it, but and
basically, I mean, it even comes like, for example, the series I played against like Adam here like recently, like I was really prepared and the Renekton into Darius, Olaf, all this kind of matchups, but I didn't actually play like a single game of Renekton Jax, and I didn't like think about how exactly to play it, and I got like completely punished the first 2 levels, right? And now, of course, like, I mean, after that I was prepared, and we never like banned Jax or anything. We left it open because like I'm aware that you let him get the push the first like 2-3 levels unless the Jax is like completely outskilled and like you are outplaying him.
Yeah.
And then like after that it gets really hard to play for Jax when the wave is parked outside your turret, you know, and and even at 6, like if Jax jumps on you, he needs to press E and you just E through him and you press ult and you take the fight after his E expires. You know, like it makes a lot of sense. Like if someone had told me this, or if I had like ask myself the question, if I was prepared that this was a matchup I was going to play, it would have made it so much easier to play. But I think that's like a skill that not everyone has, you know, that you can just visualize it like that, at least.
And then just to add for the people that are listening, it's like the nuance of like skill expression is usually in terms of how well you tether to your opponent and recognizing like when he missteps, when he overpushes, when he doesn't push, and you seize these opportunities.
I mean, there's a lot of micro things, right?
Yeah. I just wanted to say it out loud to make sure that the homies at home, when they see like an LEC player dying level 2 or some shit, that this is where everything kind of unfolds. It's like in the pursuit of perfection, there is room for mistake. And there's a lot of micro details to it.
And there are matchups where it's like way harder to put it into words how to play it without saying like basically play better, you know. I mean, there are just some matchups that just requires you to play like a lot cleaner than maybe some players would, you know. Maybe it could be the classic like it's not always true, but there are like when people say Western players shouldn't play Jace, something like this, you know. There are some matchups where if you just have worse hands, you are just better off not playing it.
I had this. I have a good example because like I'm in the Polish team for the G2 tournament, which is kind of weird. Like what am I supposed to contribute as a coach? It's like they know the champs they play, and I can make like some plans and look at some level ones and give them like some minor feedback between the games. Like, oh, you guys should make sure you keep track of TP. Make sure you set up this ward. This guy plays way too forward. Blah blah blah. Small notes, right? But we were scrimming against Nemesis and Jukil, and basically the format is it's fearless format, but no bans. But if a champion is picked once, it can't be picked again by both teams. Doesn't matter if it wins or loses. So it's like
a BO3 or something.
So if we pick Yon, then Jukil can't pick Yon. But I said first game, okay guys, Kubon plays Renekton. We're going to invite the Yon and we're going to see how it is. We're going to first pick Talia, play Renekton, and then like set up a draft to invite the Yon, because we know they're gonna play it top every time they can pick it. And it's like, I know this matchup, right? It's like in my mind, if I try to imagine this matchup, it's like Yon should be much stronger level 1, should be much stronger level 2. And ideally what happens is that you try to contest it in a way where I trade my HP and IQ on cooldown to thin out the wave so it doesn't crash 2 waves, so it doesn't bounce on Cannon as he tries to slow push into me. And then if I manage to achieve this and the Cannon crashes, I get level 3 and I should be stronger on the push out, crash the wave, and I should be stronger for the rest of the game. But in that, as Kumo was trying to do this, he's just getting like giga spaced. He's getting hit by every Q. And it's like, in that moment, it's like, yeah, you just have to dodge some of these Qs. You just need to play a little bit better, you know? And yeah, there's definitely like, that's what it was like harder. And it's like, oh, he lost all of his HP bar. He crashed 2, and then the cannon wave is bouncing. He has like 300 HP with Dawn Shield, no potion. And it's like, yeah, well, what is it to do here, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
The G2, let's say, environment, right? It's like the players are one thing. You guys were insane. All of you guys are actually still pretty fucking insane. The environment in terms of like the process of you guys like getting better and the process of exploring what champions to play and so forth. Do you think this is something that can be recreated and achieved in terms of a team environment?
I mean, we had a lot of freedom because of, I mean, it's hard to say, right? Like, I think in the format that is also right now in LEC, like you need to, it's more often than not better to just go for like the safe bets all the time. I think because the season was so long, and basically a lot of it was meaningless in the old format. It gave us like opportunities to, well, also because within the limits of practice we could get in Europe, sometimes it was even more beneficial for us to experiment, and sometimes we did it too much as well, right? Like there's always a balance. But I think it's like hard for teams to replicate without having like a lot of freedom in your basically your career, or like how the year is gonna go, regardless of you maybe wasting like a little bit of practice that could have been spent elsewhere, or like making sure you get into playoffs and stuff like this. I think the format is just like very unforgiving in that sense, and also a lot of teams are not as dominant, I guess. So it's kind of hard to recreate, but it's definitely something you can recreate if you have like more time, I think. Yeah, basically. I don't think there's much else to that. I think it also, if you have players, it's kind of hard to know if you have the players that like benefit from doing it as well. I think we just had like, we were just all 5 very open-minded and actually enjoyed playing something different. So yeah, I mean, if it came to solo queue or if it came to competitive, but we would always, I mean, I say always, but sometimes, like for example, the Garen, I would have not played in advance, but we would always basically have played like either this champion solo queue or somewhere else before we pulled it off, right? Or in my case, I guess more often than the others, I would have played it out in my mind, I guess.
Yes.
I do the fucking, what is it called? Like the Queen's Gambit, just like sitting, lying there on my bed, fucking looking up at the roof. Like, yeah, something along those lines at least.
Okay. Now I like thinking about it. I think it's like Mickey, you, and Caps have always held on to that. I felt like Jankos and Perks were a little bit more conservative in what they.
Yeah, I think Jankos was like our like stable player in that sense.
Yeah.
Like he kind of sacrificed sometimes for our creativity. I mean, of course, like playing Brom and like Funnel and stuff. But besides that, like he played a lot of like Sejuani, a lot of like these champs that could just facilitate us. And he was like a very good jungler at not necessarily taking. Sometimes maybe he farmed too little, but he was good at like being aware of when to skip what camps were necessary to skip to like basically keep the game alive or end the game for the other team and stuff like this, right? So yeah, I think that was like one of his good qualities, along with the fact that I mean he played a lot of the dog champs, right? Like the Sejuanis, that kind of stuff.
I guess I mentioned that Parks was uncreative, but during his AD carry years, he was definitely going crazy.
I think probably from mid
and the pikes.
I mean, it was a different meta back then as well, right? Like even in 2018, like people were playing the Akalis and the Urgots and all this, even in mid lane, you know. Like I remember me and him in 2018, we were also lane swapping. Like matchups, like I remember playing into what was it, Kuro, I think, on Kassadin mid when I was playing Camille or some shit like that, and like completely stomping him because we were lane swapping. So I mean, we were definitely not. It was definitely not uncreative. Yeah, I mean, it was pretty creative as well.
Okay. Yeah, I'm thinking back at like, I guess G2 in like the 4 splits that they won before 2018 and 2019 were more of the stable kind of team that wanted to like just find repetition in something.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. And probably even then, probably Perks was like the most creative out of those. Like I remember, like he was playing like Echo and stuff. I mean, that was the meta, right? But this was like, I guess back then, their other members were a lot more like stable, consistent.
No, that's fair. That's always fun to follow. It's like even in our most recent year, you always had cool ideas on how you wanted to approach things. It was the Shyvana in the back pocket, but I was limiting you a lot. I was talking about the recipe.
No, I mean within
win games.
Yeah, that's what I said, right? Like if you're on a team that can afford to. I mean, also like afford in standings wise, but also afford like mentality wise. Like if me picking or like me or a certain other player picking like a random champion when scrims are already going really fucking horrible, and then even though it might not be the issue that we are losing scrims, but then like the game or whatever, that I pick a random champion, but then people are still gonna start questioning like why are we even playing this when we can't even win with like the good stuff, you know. Like there's always like a lot of random factors that goes into playing like something new that people don't usually play.
It's definitely like you need to create your own luxury in the fact that like having the energy and the time and the effort to invest into something, that's a luxury you can't randomly find when the season has started. It's like that needs to be put in place ahead of time, and then you need to buy that time through winning pretty much. And we were always, especially in summer, we're like on the back foot, and we also, as we were on the back foot, we also were in that position where our scrims were not what we wanted them to be, and we had zero energy or effort to invest. We had to put anything extra in like maintenance. It's like we had to hold on to what we had.
And I think also like some teams, if it's like coaching or staff or players, like some teams just require like a lot more convincing than others, right? And I think in G2, none of us required to be convinced, you know. We were just like, yeah, sure, do it. Like that was basically the thought process. And that I mean, it makes sense to kind of like police it a little bit, but I guess with our team, just the luxury we had of like all being very good, it was just not necessary, right? But there's a potential of it being like too much as well if the players are just not good enough. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's pretty much what I said already.
Before I unravel the whole your Fnatic journey now in summer and the playoffs, I wanted to ask or give you a take that I have, and then get your opinion on it, because I think that you're the best person to bring this up to. So my take is that the gap between the West and the East, ever since it started back in like season 3 essentially, right? I think that the gap has never been closed, and as everything progresses due to the amount of resources and the amount of players and the mentality and the culture and all of these things that put the Chinese teams and the Korean teams in a favorable position. The gap will continue to widen. And even my take here is that even in the context of 2018 and 2019, that the gap was still wide in what the expected turnaround should be as the year unfolds. Because my take is that 2019 G2 was an outlier on so many levels in terms of where the meta was, how the roster aligned, and also factors that mattered globally. Because, for example, Korea was on the downturn and they were just waiting for the Sandbox and the Griffin and the Damwon to actually come out of Challenger and like rise and become like actual strong players, right? And then there was the turmoil of the IG roster, right? That was the promised roster and that came into that year. And then at the same time, you guys coming together as a roster. It's like a roster coming together. There's a lot of fucking moving pieces in terms of contracts, in terms of timings, in terms of agreements. It's like that G2 roster is such a fucking heavy outlier that I can't use it as an argument for the gap being closed for some reason, right? Because that result was heavily hinged on all of these factors that went in the direction of, let's say, Europe at the time. Do you see what I'm getting at?
Yeah, I mean for sure, like there's no question that right now the gap is like bigger than it was in 2019 between like, but in 2019 the gap was also big, just not between like I guess the G2 and the Eastern teams, but between like if you took a random like a fourth place Korean team or Chinese team against a European fourth place team, the gap would be like probably as big as it is today. Maybe like a little not as big, but almost as big. And I think, I mean, for sure, like as you said, the two biggest things are probably like, well, for one, the culture, which is also in a weird way a thing that maybe have held them back as well. Because I mean, as we already touched on, like in G2 we were like very free and creative, which back then this sense I'm feeling without knowing too much about how it functioned in Korea especially, was that it was like very coach final word.
For sure, yeah.
And you kind of you live within that frame, you know. So in a way, it's like I think in a way that us being good in 2019 kind of also. I mean, I don't watch anime or something. I don't want to make it sound like a fucking anime as well. What happened, but Korea and basically and China as well have probably like leveled up from like seeing how we play.
For sure.
And I mean, this would have happened probably regardless, right? Just one team just had to be the one that like kind of broke out of the frame of how they felt like the game should be played and viewed, which just happened to be, I guess, us in that year. But now it's like even harder. Like now they have basically got that information, that knowledge, and you can't really replicate the same thing. You know, you need to do something else now if you're a team that wishes to beat. Well, you need to beat them and better, or you need to like do something special that they haven't seen before, which is like kind of hard to do in season 13 or whatever the fuck we're playing now. So I think for sure it's like it looks a bit not doomed, but with the money, culture, and the amount of players that they have in the region, it's like there needs to be a very special team put together to beat that, you know.
100%. It's also like to even when there's already like great teams within the region, to have other teams pursuing those players and those teams within that region is also such a strong like a factor, because it's like
definitely, yeah,
the years like 2018 2019 where Fnatic was great and then you guys were great too, and also 2020, it's like I felt like just because you guys were in the mix, that also just made the region a lot better in general, right? Because there's a clear mission to beat a team that is insanely good, and the improvement steps become so much more obvious when you're faced with that resistance.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, yeah, of course, like the practice is way better for them, but also since I guess winning worlds is like seen as an unrealistic goal for like a lot of players in the Western teams, getting like a good roster together is also way harder, right? Because then people will value like money and all this kind of stuff just a little bit more. I'm not saying like that everyone values money more than what people they play with, but I could imagine comparatively to like some of the Asian leagues where like a lot more people, I would probably bet that a lot more people than in the Western leagues would give up their entire salary just in the chance that they would win worlds, because the chance is actually more visible to them.
Yes.
Than for Western players, right? And that makes like that just gives like a different vibe as well to some of these teams that are being made,
No, for sure. I agreed, and it makes perfect sense too that it is that way. And I wouldn't fault anyone for choosing what they prioritize, right? It's just definitely like after 2019, like scrimming in Korea, being in Korea for Split, it was you could see that the pathway, especially with Damwon, was just different. It's like playing against those guys, I felt like it was different. I think DRX was also in that box. T1 held on to a lot of the old, and this was the time where they did like the crazy roster swaps. But even like looking at the approach to coaching, like there's a lot more player coaches in Korea than it was before, and a lot of the teams, I get the impression, are more player driven. And some of the coaches that were known as very, very stern, harsh coaches, they are not at the top anymore. Like I think the name that comes to mind is like Coach Kim. It's like when I asked Gorilla about Coach Kim, so he was on IG and he was on Longzhu and he was on Samsung. Like he has a fucking reputation. But when I asked Gorilla about him, basically his nickname was Genghis Khan. Like this guy was Genghis Khan. Imagine having that nickname in the context of coaching players. Like he was...
Holy fuck. Insta respect when Genghis Khan walks into the room.
100%. And then there was like the whole drama with the T1, and I think that he didn't want to. I don't know the whole story about that, but I can like imagine how it played out. And it's like now T1 is like they had the Bengi coach, and they just went in the player direction, and you could see that evolution, so to speak, is also like playing out, because it's like now as well the coach of Genji is Scout, right? Not Scout, sorry, Score. And there was definitely like, I think the 2019 year was a catalyst for all of that.
Yeah, I mean, for like my view on like the coaching, I mean, I think some players do need like a Genghis Khan, and some players do need like a more like laid back approach. Of course, it just like really depends, and also depends on the situation. I think like, I mean, I'm not gonna sit. I'm of course like I'm gonna word it correctly. So because I actually really do like respect grabs and everything, But I think if you have 5 really really good players, they actually don't need anything. Truthfully, the only thing they need is someone to facilitate discussion and like make sure that whatever information is being like conveyed so everyone like understands it, and everyone, like, I mean, that's like a meme word, right? But is on the same page,
Yes.
And everyone like you can have, and makes like sure that it's presented in a way where basically just it's like it saves a lot of time. I think the worst thing you can have when you have like 5 really good players is like a coach that tries to like limit the players and also takes up a lot of time and like puts a lot of unnecessary stress on the players that, I mean, well, as I said, is unnecessary. But like there are also teams where you have, for example, 2 really good players who maybe are not as reliant on like a coach. And I think coach can always be helpful almost no matter how good you are, right? But it's just a different way of helping. But then you can have a team with 2 really good players, and you can have a team that maybe has a really bad like mid jungle, and there a coach can be more useful, or like dedicate more of his time, right? This is just like, I mean, you know this well, like when you're coaching teams, that some weeks you don't even look at jungle, for example. If jungle is like really smurfing, you look at how maybe the bot lane is playing, or try and figure out how to like fix the issues. But yeah, I think that's like my main take on it, is that, yeah, I think the game has gotten to a point that if you are like a good player, you don't have to know everything within the game, but you know, like, you need to know without someone telling you what like the big points of the game is and how to play it. Where I think like back in season 6, season 7, you could get away with like not knowing like a lot about the game at all, right? And just being good at the game. But now it's like you need to have both. And I think a coach can help with that, but you can't ever be dependent on a coach, I think, right now to like teach you the game, because then you would never make it in the first place.
No, I agree with you completely. It's like there's a big difference between like an elite player where you are confident that they will figure out what needs to be figured out, because it's like most of the time, for example, when we worked together in the most recent year, it's like my purpose there is to provide maintenance and to make any step that you need to go through easier. It's not about me teaching you something. That's not going to be the case. It's like in a lot of cases, it's like, oh, Wunder, tell me about this matchup that you found. Can you tell me what's up, or what do you need? And then it's like, you educated me on something, because it's like a strong player is always going to be like right at the front of the line, exploring what's coming next. And and as you mentioned as well, like it's like in some cases, oh, there's a fire here that you need to solve. Then you just kind of engulf yourself in that, and then you should be capable of applying yourself to something and understanding it inside out. Like if you, for example, told me, Yamato, tell me about this matchup, I'd say, oh, maybe I don't know now, but I can think about it for maybe 30 minutes, maybe look up some solo queue votes, look at what people are playing, and then I will have a very, very strong opinion. It's like if there's a piece of information that is needed, you need to have the capacity to process that information, which is like crucial. And at the higher end of players, I think, as you mentioned, it comes down to making the life of the players as easy as humanly possible. And that can be like in very, very different forms if you have a player that is like capable of performing. And easier can sometimes mean also making it harder if it is a person that needs that in order to like perform. Some people need a hard hand, some people need a soft hand, but when you have players that are really, really good at the game, like maintenance, making sure that nothing ever slips in terms of, like, let's say you're performing super, super well, and then I notice that you begin to play less, and maybe you are like, let's say a player is like more tired coming into the office, and I notice like things are slipping. It's like that's where things can come in, and making sure that the structure that you've created for yourself is maintained rather than enforcing some kind of structure onto you. It's like this is how you perform, and you're aware of it, and supporting in that is it's like usually what it comes down to. And what that structure is, it's like that's what is very, very individual, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. No, it's like on my end, as you mentioned yourself, it's like in order for a region that is inferior by every metric, you need to create and find a very, very extreme outlier in order to win. And there's many ways of things becoming freak outlier cases. It's like last year at Worlds, even us, we were going through fucking freak cases. It's like we had players that had COVID, and then we play with Rocks. It's like that's a freak case. And it's like DRX won, and that's a fucking complete freak case in terms of how everything played out. It's like EDG with 2-0 up, and then they like collapse within that best of 5. Like a lot of things need to go so right, and there's examples of that in in like real life too, in other contexts. It's like Dagestan, they produce the best wrestlers ever, but that's a country, they have no fucking money, and they just have a way of training and a way of life that supersedes and conquers all in terms of wrestling. When there's like countries in the world that spend millions and billions, and they have so many athletes, and they have programs and everything set up, but they're just doing worse because they figured out something. Or there's an example of, I believe there's a university in Japan that produces on average the most Nobel Prize winning students, and there has to be, it doesn't mean that they have the most money, maybe they do now, it doesn't mean that they have the most students or the most resources, just it's in the way that they have conducted themselves, making them into an actual outlier. And I think that's what's required, like whether it's in game or situations playing out a very certain way. And not to take anything away from you guys winning MSI, it's like you guys were really insane. The best of 5 against SKT is like one of my favorite best of 5s ever. But then you walk into the finals and you play a Team Liquid, you know? It's like IG. What the fuck happened to IG that year? You know, it's a mystery. Like I don't know who insulted someone's mother, you know. But I mean,
yeah. The best thing you can do is just make sure that you are there when the variants hit, you know. Because I mean, in 2019 as well, like the World Finals, in theory, you can make the argument that there only needed to be not an FPX there, and we would have won, you know. I mean, in 2018, FPX was not even a team, you know. Like they were not actually relevant. So I mean, they were a team probably. I don't actually know, but they were not relevant, at least internationally. So like you could make the argument that just like a few things has to go right for us to have actually won a world, you know.
Yes.
And this is always going to be the case as long as you are there to grab the opportunity when it happens. And I think that's like the best thing. But that's the thing you should probably strive for. Yeah, I don't 100%. Think you can make a team that will for sure make it, because everyone is going to try to make it, and you're going to play against a lot more Eastern teams that are actually built to win worlds than you are going to play against Western teams that are built to win worlds. That's just the reality of it.
Yes. And it's like there's the saying, right? That luck is where opportunity and preparation meets.
Yeah, for sure.
And to just underline this, it's like the initial point I wanted to bring out is just all of the odds are stacked against us in terms of Korea and and China creating those teams that are gonna be the outliers that win. But even though those odds are stacked against us, there are some odds there, and it just needs to be approached in a very creative way, and the stars need to align. And sometimes you have teams like JDG, but there's a chance that maybe something falls apart, you know? It's like sometimes someone breaks a hand, or
it's not unheard of that a team completely chokes it and becomes a lot worse. There's different patches, there's like a lot of things that can go wrong, honestly. Yeah,
and that's the beauty of the game. And that's a perfect segue to Fnatic calling up Wunder. Now that's beauty a freak case.
It's true, yeah.
Oh shit! How? What were you doing at the time? This was the Baldur's Gate time? No, what was going on during this time?
Oh, Hardcore was just released, I think.
Okay.
Like I mean, like 2 days after Hardcore was released. I think
that shit sucks, no? So it's like you saved yourself from that.
I played a little bit, but no, I think. I mean, like. I guess like 3 weeks prior to that, I was playing like a decent bit of solo queue. I looked at the patch notes as well, and I saw like, oh shit, Akali is getting buffed. Like it's actually laneable now in solo queue, you know. So I was like, oh, I'll play some Akali. I was talking a bit to Shaves every now and then, and he likes to like pitch his ideas as well. And he sometimes keeps me updated on like not what's going on in the team, but kind of like how they're doing or if they're struggling with something. Like, okay, yeah, I mean, that sounds cool. And then I think Chase was the first one to approach me about like how, basically how their situation was and what happened with Oscar's hand and stuff like that, right? And initially, I don't know if it was like language barrier or they actually wanted me to play the Excel series. on the potential Excel series, but this was like, he wrote me 2 days before the Excel series, and Javi, the general manager from Fnatic, wrote me a day before the Excel series.
Okay.
But initially, I actually thought Shaves wanted me to play that Excel series, and then I actually said no, because I was like, with the amount of practice that I haven't had and preparation, I don't feel comfortable just risking, it's not like risking my career as much, but in theory it is like risking my career if I get absolutely shit stomped.
No, of course.
I was not comfortable doing that with like a time frame of 1 day, and probably it's actually no practice if it's like a day before. And then later I found out that it was against BDS that they wanted me to play, and I was still, of course, like I'm still really hesitant because playing like I had 3 days of practice, and I'm subbing in for a team. I'm not exactly sure what to expect, but I just decided to go for it anyways. And I don't know, like a part of me was like hoping that Fnatic just loses to XL, and a part of me was hoping that they were gonna win and that I was gonna play, because I was really on the fence,
Yeah.
And even like the first day when I arrived and just played some solo queue and like I got the vibes of the team, I was really unsure if I made the right choice, like it was kind of a battle in my head, like was it actually correct to do this?
I see.
But yeah, everyone was like I was afraid of maybe like the team feeling like that it's just lost, and there was no reason for me to have come here in the first place, because I really wanted to I was working really, really fucking hard to make sure that I was gonna be up to speed on everything. So I just wanted to I just hope that it would be replicated by other people as well, right? And preparing against I don't know if you have another question to that, but preparing against Adam, I guess, is what I would talk about.
No, you can. We will unfold this in whatever way it comes to mind. So preparing against Adam.
Yeah, I always felt like, of course, there's a lot of people are the narratives and the history, right, of playing for a world spot, all this kind of stuff, right, against Adam. But I always felt like preparing, if there was one series I should go into, I think against XL would have been fine too with a week of preparation, because I feel like Odo, he's really good on his champs, of course, but he's always been a lot more limited champ pool wise than some other players, right? Yeah. So I would kind of know what to expect going into play with him. And the same kind of would be the same I kind of felt against Adam, where of course, if I shit the bed, right, he will take advantage of that, because he is a player that he can exploit.
He's a squeezer.
He can squeeze the matchups because he's played them so much. And if you haven't had similar experience, or just experience in what to do against it, right? But at the same time, I felt like it was kind of easy to prepare against him, because I knew that they would never gonna end up banning Renekton. So if I just left everything open, and I either played into his Renekton or played Renekton myself, the only thing I actually had to prepare, besides the one curveball Jax that he actually had played one game before, but I didn't expect to pick with all his champions that he likes to play into Renekton open, right? But the only champs I had to prepare for was Renekton into Darius, Renekton into Olaf, just Renekton matchups basically, right? And I felt pretty confident, and I also got I did 1v1s against Brokenblade first week. We talked a lot about the matchups, and I've watched a lot of VODs and everything.
Oh, BB must have been perfect for that. He plays all of that shit, right? He played Darius a lot, and Olaf.
Yeah, the joke was that when we then when I went into lobby with him, he said, "Do you want me to play this like Adam, the lethal tempo Darius and everything?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, that would be ideal." And honestly, every single game that matchup, Brokenblade was just he was completely fucked level 3, because he was going completely crazy, right?
Yeah.
And I was and that honestly, it gave me a lot of confidence. I know that he was like he was trying to like push it, like he was trying to squeeze it, you know, right? So I'm not saying that Brokenblade is shit or anything like that, but it gave me a lot of confidence that I know that if he goes like completely apeshit crazy, that I would be completely fine in these matchups, you know. And at the same time, I mean, if he didn't, then I would also know how to play these later on, you know, like I would not be clueless to this as well. So I was kind of confident going into a matchup against him. And the only thing was like, yeah, I mean, how it would work playing with the team and everything, which ended up being fine as well. I mean, we were for sure a lot worse week 1 than we were going into the finals week, I think.
Was the team, because we had the conversation of the winter and then the spring, was the team that it is now, was your experience something that like if this was the experience that was offered to you in spring, would that be something that you'd pounce on? Did you have enough of a feeler on it that you could say that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the team for sure is a lot better. I mean, of course, it will always be shade, right? But like, there's no secret that the bot lane is like a lot better performing than it was in winter, and even in spring as well. And I think alongside that, I feel like Ivan Razork is actually, I mean, performing like out of his mind, right? And Humanoid has like some really good, like in this meta, really good chambers that he plays. Like he's not actually limited in draft. In the past he would not like to pick up like the
hard to convince.
I didn't see him picking up champions like Tristana, maybe some Jace, but like all these champions that he plays now, he's actually like, it works in the draft, you know. I don't know if it's just the meta or just the faith he has in the team, maybe more so, that he is like more free to play these kind of champs. And I think the team just works like all together way better than it did in winter. I mean, no surprise they made finals, right? So yeah, for sure. I mean, the team is way more functional. There's still like some issues, of course. I think when it comes to like, they have more camaraderie than in winter as well, and maybe even 2022. But if I have to compare it to like G2, it still feels a little bit forced. But I think that's just like what we had in 2019 G2 or like 2020, even 2018 to some extent, because we got along well with Jan and Vedit at the time, was just a little bit more special. Whereas now, I mean, people actually stay in the office in Fnatic and they like to do stuff and all this kind of stuff. But at the same time, it also feels like it gives me a little bit a vibe of it being a little bit forced at the same time. But I think that's just normal, maybe. Maybe that's just me coming in like 1 week and just looking at things from the outside. But yeah.
So you got called up. Javi said, yo, you're going to play against BDS. Exactly. You had 1 week, or you say 3 days with travel?
I said yes. Basically, I mean, I signed the contract with a clause that basically said, if we are to win the series against Excel, this contract comes into effect. I signed that on the day that they played.
Okay.
And it was sent to me the day before, because that's when we talked about it, right? And then in my head, I was like, okay, I'm going to play a little bit, but then I'm going to like watch the series. And if they win, I'm just going to spam the fucking game, you know? And that's basically when my practice started. And then I had travel day on their off day, which is like the day after they play. So I basically just traveled the day after I signed the contract. And then we actually had a free day then the day after that, just to like play solo queue and all that stuff. I think, I mean, I could say it now, I guess. I think the only option we had was to scrim G2. And I think there was made a decision that from mental wise, like also because they didn't know what to expect with me, probably, or I don't know. I mean, they also had really bad results against G2, I think, just usually with their main roster, that they just decided to have a solo queue day instead, which was fine with me. I basically told them I don't mind playing. I don't mind playing. I don't mind doing anything. Just tell me what you want me to do, and I'll do it. You know, like I don't want to come in here and like make demands of, no, I don't want to play G2, or say, oh, I really want to play G2. I just make the decision as a team, and I'll just follow. But yeah, I mean, that's basically the practice I had. And then I had 3 days, I think, after that, until we played BDS.
That's crazy. This contract that you signed, you don't have to say exactly, but was it more on the basis as this is really good for the both of us? Was it lucrative? What was the basis of it? If you can.
Honestly, when I talked to them about helping them out, I didn't even mention getting paid. Like I didn't talk when I said yes, I can do this. I didn't talk about like how I would get compensated or anything like that. So I was not doing it for the money. And sure, they were really like desperate, it seemed like, when they talked to me. So if I wanted to, I could have like probably squeezed them for more for like something. But I felt like it was not the time to like squeeze, you know. Like I mean, they were in an unfortunate situation, and if anything, it will just look bad on me if I try to like make them pay me like insane amounts or something. But
that makes sense.
But I mean, I got the contract, and they were basically matching whatever I got before, just for like per series basis, right? So I think it probably adds up to, I get like a month paid salary if we play all 3 series, which we ended up doing, of what I had before. And I mean, I was not in it for that, but I guess that's nice as well.
Neat. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No, it's been interesting to and really fun to see Ivan's like growth over the year. It's weird because always I was like when I talked to him, especially this weekend, I told him, Ivan, that you going through the shit of winter and spring was the best thing that could have happened to you.
Yeah, I mean he is like very much more emotional than I am, for sure. And he has like things in his, like he lets a lot of things affect him that I wouldn't do, but that also makes him kind of the player he is at the same time. So I mean, I can respect it. I joked a lot about it with him, that where was this Ivan, you know, when I played with him? Did he hate me or what? Like, why is not this insane when I played with him? But yeah, I mean, I think he has, I mean, for one, found like, well, he has like lanes that he can more or less rely on. Compared, like he felt pretty stuck probably in Winter, like having to cover for a lot of things, or he felt like he had to overcompensate in a lot of situations. Probably is how I feel. That he might not have to do anymore. And yeah, I mean, he's gotten good at like some niche champions as well. And I mean, overall, I mean, he has been performing, I would say, like the best jungler.
Yeah,
of course,
agreed.
like of course, Yike had, I guess, a pretty good series against us, the final. But I don't think that's enough to like make me say definitively that he is a better player. I think Ivan has been playing really good besides that, I guess, series.
No, I agree. I even before the whole thing, I think in summer I just put like my all pro was pretty much full G2, but with Razork there, because I think that
I guess that was like the general consensus, right? It was like
people put
Jankos. Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying like the whole entirety of G2 has been like a number 1, but then some people have like put Jankos, some people have just put Yike. I guess like some Fnatic fans have put Razork. I mean, you don't really know.
No, I put Razork up there, and like Yike got voted in, and full respect to Yike, but I thought Razork was the better one. I think it was good for him to see what he missed in a way, and I think there was an added layer of gratefulness when it was back again, you know, to have a bot lane that is a lot more functional, and it seemed like he was a lot more aware of that after suffering for 2 splits. And it seemed like he wanted to give a lot more of himself into that, and he seems just a tad bit more mature about things. I will never forget that first month of working with Razork, and he say, Yamato, today is gonna be a grief day. I'm like, what the fuck are you saying, Razork? You say it's a grief day, you're gonna make 20 people that are working in this scrim set, you're gonna make us all have a grief day because of your state of mind right now. I remember. And now he has grown so much. Evanchik is cool. Humanoid, business as usual. Humanoid.
I think, I mean, for sure, like as I said, I think I would say he is like, I mean, it's always like that when you talk about players. I mean, when you say who is the best like who is the best mid laner or whatever, right? You don't mean that this guy, no matter what he plays, like what champion he plays, he's the best mid laner. It's just like overall, you know, on average, and like the eye test and everything. I would say it's probably been that for a long time, but I would say, I mean, Humanoid has been probably the most consistently good player on like the Alcir matchups and like this kind of stuff. I think where Caps has the edge is still like the creativity when he plays champs like LeBlanc, Ari, champs like this, you know, Nico even, yeah. I think he, like laning wise, Humanoid is probably a little bit better. Maybe not on like the LeBlanc or something, I don't actually know. But on the control mages. But I think Cap's ability to like not play as conventional and like play to his champion strength a bit more when he's playing really creative champions, he does better than Marek for sure. And then I guess like depending on what team you're on, like a player will be better because of that, right?
Yes. I always made the comparison, and sometimes people laughed at me, but I always saw Humanoid as just the European Chovy. Like, now Chovy is evolving a lot, and he's like spreading his mid lane wings. It feels like most elite tier mid laners go through that process of first being like very dominant laners, very good at like dragging attention to themselves and like exuding pressure. And then there's this evolution where you realize where you can win so much more through other avenues than just yourself. It's like,
I mean, for sure. Like if Caps in the past was way more of a laner, which I mean, he still does. But even in the past as well, he was like the guy who would play like Katarina and Aurelion Sol and all these champions, you know. So it's always been like a part of him. But he was just like, I mean, not so far ahead because Perks was still there, but comparatively to like a lot of mid laners, he was like able to do both better, you know.
Yes.
But now I think there are more mid laners that are able to contest that. And I think, for example, Humanoid, I mean, he can contest the laning phase aspect of it, right? He's like really good at it. So yeah, I mean, I think, of course, I'm not saying Caps is like shit at laning, but I think Humanoid is probably one of the people that on certain champions will do it better.
For sure. Like I think, as you mentioned, like the meta aligned very well for him, considering I think it's like the mid lane champs it's the goal is to generate the gold, and the challenge in that is like how you play around jungle and how you play side and so forth. And I think that Humanoid has always been very, very good at this. And you mentioned Azir, Jace, Justana. It's like you get the gold and you will be able to be so impactful. And if it was a world where it was like Nico heavy, Ari heavy, Annie heavy, I think this is where you need to have a very, very strong eye for what sacrifices you need to make, and in order to like break the game. But I think a lot of mid laners struggle with that. It's just the question of Humanoid being elite in some aspects, and in some aspects just lagging behind Caps, like in that conversation.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah,
I think it's cool. It's like, I wonder when Humanoid, if it ever happens, if he's going to go through that similar transformation, because I think Humanoid has the capacity to maybe in the context of like a year, which he has, right? 2021, winning a back-to-back with Matt, and this was rough year for G2. You know all about it. He has definitely done that right, but in a world where like achieving that gameplay where that creativity is shown, maybe not necessarily tied to caps, but where that creativity is shown and he makes a breakthrough on that department, then he could be really, really complete as a player. And watching Chovy now, like it's a weird example because I've had this example with Humanoid for like 2 years now, but now it feels like Chovy is going through that evolution in terms of like recognizing how he can break the game through other avenues than being like 30 years ahead. Where
I mean, it's like you go through I think there's like always a middle ground, right? Like sometimes caps roams and it's completely grief, right?
Yes.
Sometimes having 10 years more in the mid lane matchup could have been spent better elsewhere, you know?
Yes.
It's there's the balance it's just, I guess, like as you mentioned, Chovy is probably like a thing he's going through, you know? Like just just like the most optimal way to play to win the game.
100%.
And sometimes that can be like a more farm-centric mid than just carrying late, which is like I think the style that Marek has historically preferred. Just like be strong in the game in your own lane, and then go into fights. And I mean, sometimes he ends them, but sometimes he plays them well. Like I mean, there's always optimization, but I think that's like the style he has preferred for the longest.
Yes. It's fun to see that like Faker went through that evolution, like Showmaker definitely went through that evolution after the Yo series, right? Where Caps is just like pushing every wave and like diving the Guri on cooldown, where you play like Rise into Irelia and Irelia can't breathe at all because you're a psychopath to be in that matchup in the first place. But there was, of course, the added layer of safety and the trust that you have for your teammates, of course, and that also definitely like reshaped how Showmaker approached the game, and Canyon and Showmaker. Like Showmaker became the player that was always on time and on point in terms of how he connects with his jungler, and that made them very, very great. I feel like it's always that transformation, but you need to first show the individual capacity to lane at that level before it expands to anything else. And Caps' breakthrough was like that game against Perks where he plays Rise against his Syndra and like completely like shits on him respectfully. Like shits on him, not in the sense that, oh, he just stomped it. No, it's like it was like really, there was finesse to it. I remember I did an interview and I said Caps is at the time, I think it was 2017 was his first year, right?
Yeah, it was.
And I remember I did an interview. I was like, Caps is the best like laning mid laner in Europe, and I got so fucking buried and flamed for it. But it was easy to see from outside. I think that there was something special there. So
yeah, there was a lot of hype around him for sure.
I wanted to. Like for me it was pretty funny because it's like I remember we had conversations like on stream. You said jokingly, it's like I remember this comment you say, if I played with Trymbi I would get an insta headache. How has your experience been with Trymbi and the bot lane? How is it to be in game with such a passionate man?
I think it was like watching like a mic check of Trymbi like completely screaming. And honestly, it was not actually like I don't know if he has changed or anything, but it was not actually like an issue for me.
Okay.
With how he was like communicating in fights or anything. I don't know. I think that was like the reason why I said it, right? But I think I mean, the bot lane, it seems like, I mean, of course, there's like issues, there's good things and bad things about everything, and especially when you have to work together, like in the same lane. But I think generally, they have figured out a way to play way better, at least like support jungle than in Winter when I was there with Rox and Razork. But also just like, I think Trymbi, he understands the game, and he also takes it on himself, you know, like if he does something that is bad, he doesn't want to like argue the point. He's like acknowledging that he could have done something different or done something better, and he just moves on and like tries to learn from it. Is the feeling that I get, right?
Okay.
He doesn't like. He's really fast to just take it on the chin and move on, you know.
Okay.
And it's not that stubborn in that sense. I think the only criticism of him when it came to stage games is like a thing that I feel like a lot of supports actually have, is that when things aren't really going as good, either for him individually or just like, let's say you're down in a series or something, right? I get a feeling that his response is that he like wants to make a play, you know, he wants to like bounce back like that, which is like kind of like a Healy thing as well. I think
Yes.
it's like you bounce back by like making something proactive happen, where that's not always like the right response, right? But honestly, besides that, it was like really, I mean, it was really fun to work with all of them, and Trymbi included. And I think he is very professional about like how to approach the game and reviews and all this stuff. So,
oh, super cool. I think it's like the way everything played out. I think, like obviously the finals is the finals, right? But like from an outside point of view, G2 was a clear favorite, of course. And in my mind, I don't think it could have played out any better in terms of what you wanted out of it and what Fnatic wanted out of it. How do you feel in the aftermath?
Yeah, I mean, before I was even approached, I didn't honestly expect Fnatic to even make it to the final.
Yeah, same.
I thought they could, and I thought that they would lose against G2 if they did, regardless. So, I mean, I thought, of course, they did. I mean, I think like everyone else, that G2 was like the big favorites. I mean, even after helping them sub in, I still knew that we were the underdogs. But of course, like I'm not gonna like go into any series thinking that no matter what happens, we're gonna lose. Because the reality is that on any given day, like it just takes like 1 or 2 games. And you're basically won the series, right? And I even think the series we played against G2 could have easily been won. And I think it was like in our hands also to win some of these games with the positions we were in, but we just didn't like clutch it out, or we threw and stuff like this happened, you know. And of course, like we were maybe, if we played 50 games, we would have gotten even more smashed, and could have lost more because they were the favorites. And I think on average, maybe we should have lost, but it was for sure possible to win the series. And yeah, I mean, besides that, I mean, going into it, I did think the G2 was the better team. But honestly, a lot of things in these 2 weeks have also surprised me about Fnatic that I didn't expect.
Okay.
With like Trymbi included, and I mean how Razork performs, and Humanoid with like playing like good meta champions. And for Noah, like I actually always, I mean, I'm not gonna say always, but I actually wrote to Shaves about it because I wanted to. I was like pitching the idea of playing with Noah before Fnatic even approached him. And like I even like brought it up that maybe Noah would be a good replacement going into the splits to come. And then when he wrote me about it, they had a few options, and he wrote me about my thoughts about who they could have actually gotten for the team, like going into summer, right?
Yeah.
And there were people like European players that had played before, and maybe some that would have been like a safer bet. But I felt like Noah had like the biggest upside. So I just told him as well that I think if you want like the best chance of winning, I would pick Noah or them, right? And I think besides like, of course, there's all this stuff about like him having jitters on stage and everything. I think I can feel that he's like really trying, you know, and he doesn't need, I mean, some imports need like a lot of security to not feel homesick, or to like keep grinding, you know. But I feel like he's really like trying to win, and this was like his rookie split, you know, and he did play maybe a little bit worse than he would have if it was not on a big stage. But I think in like overall, he also had like some really good games against BDS, against Matt as well. Like he was not just choking every game. You know, he had like one really bad game, I guess, in comparison to his other ones. But I don't think he was like choking out of his mind, maybe as people like to make it seem like.
Okay, well. He had that short stint, I believe, was over in LCK, right, with the KT.
Yeah, okay.
I think something that I would imagine helped him a lot was just the fact that he actually spent time in the ERLs and like spent time in Europe playing. I think you need. It's like it's a lot to take in at once for anyone that like for the first time moves to Berlin, right, and has a new environment. But it's even more so for someone that. Comes to an environment that is so foreign on so many aspects to do that on their own. Like I have experience in that with like bringing over Mowgli, right? And I think that was there's so much that you need to adjust to assume that your level is going to transfer is a very, very big demand. I think when you have those imports that just click right away and like for example, like when Trick came over, right? Like it just clicked for him, right? And he just became an absolute machine. I think same thing could be said probably for Spirit too, but I think that people don't have a fond memory of Spirit, even though I thought that he was really, really fucking insane.
Yeah.
I think also for Huni ran over, like there was a package deal, right, that came over. I think that was also something that was carefully planned, but for the most part, it's like there's a lot of challenges in the adjustment period, and it seems like Noah is going to have like he seems to be the type of player that is going to just get better. That's the feeling I get.
Yeah, I mean, I think of course, like everything I say about all, like I mean, they could have just been on their best behavior as well, right? Like I was I was only with them for like, I mean, I practiced with them for maybe like 25 games in total, something like that. And we were on a road show, you know, things are usually like a little bit more loose, you know, and yeah, I mean, they are playing with a sub, so maybe in their minds as well, this is just like no matter what happens, you can just brush it off and say it like that, you know. And I don't know how everyone was during the entirety of the split. Like maybe Noah and Trymbi really fucking hated each other, you know. Like I don't know, right? But when I was there, this was the feeling that I got. Yeah. That everyone was like trying really hard, and yeah, I mean, I think Noah and Trymbi included as well.
I think in the end, it's like coming into those BO5s, that's where the stress level is very, very alleviated. So I'm sure that you're speaking mostly truth, of course, in terms of their character, right?
Yeah, I mean, in theory, going into BO5s can like, it can be both ways, right? It can be like really stressful if you feel like you're not prepared, but I feel like you should always be of the mindset that if something had to be changed going into a roadshow, then it's like too late already, you know? So you should just embrace that this is what we have. And yes. I feel like everyone was kind of doing that, you know? Like, as you said, probably winning against BDS already like exceeded what Fnatic had hoped for given the situation they were in, and maybe what even I had hoped for as well, right? Because of course, like if we lost against BDS, they could have had any other top laner and they would have lost against BDS. It wouldn't have mattered, right? So I could give them the win against BDS by me being me, I guess, and helping them out. Was already probably, I mean, for me, it was not right because I felt like Matt was beatable, and even G2 as well to some extent. They are not like completely unbeatable. So you always want to go further, but in the minds of like the public even, and also just expectations, this should already have exceeded expectations, you know, that we managed to beat BDS with like given the situation everyone was in, and maybe that alleviated like a lot of stress as well for them.
In terms of the coaching staff, because this was so it's Hiva, Nightshare, Shavy Baby. I know that Gax was there too from the academy team, and occasionally Freeze was there. Like that's the packed house. How are they working? How was it working together with them? I imagine that Shaves was working closely with you, because I know how Shaves works, and he's going to do his utmost best to prepare you. But in regards to how the structure of it all, how did you enjoy it, and how did they like to work?
Yeah, I mean, I think in compared to Winter, where I think the coaching structure was, there was like a lot of what I at least considered like time waste. Like a lot of like, there was like this classic, basically what we talked about earlier, where like the coach, and to some extent the staff as well, like demands you to play within their frame, like their mind.
Yeah.
And I think it's a lot more free in how they do it right now. And there's of course like the essential like draft meets and all this kind of stuff, and like meet about like how you want to like what is it called, like approach the weekend or the week of scrims even, and stuff like this. But it's not like pushed over the edge, like unnecessary time waste, and all this doesn't happen to the same extent. Obviously we had a lot more to talk about with me coming in, and a lot of things that they could tell me about. Like for example, we rewatched the stage game they played against Excel, so with me as well, so like we could all like I could like kind of be introduced to how they talk and stuff like this, right? But in general, I think the time they take and the amount they like trust the players is also a lot better. Like I don't think like Nightshare doesn't pride himself on being like super knowledgeable, you know. He doesn't push his knowledge on like other people. And of course it's like it's fine, like it's fine to do that if you have knowledge as well, right? But he doesn't like waste time speaking about something that he already knows within himself that he there's no reason for him to say, you know. And this is like the biggest difference from Winter. And I think, I mean, honestly, they all worked really well together. I mean, some people focus a lot more on bot lane, like Kiva, for example, because he's the player on bot. Now they had Oscar watching on the sideline, and he would of course with Shaves, as you said, like watch from my POV, and we would go over some things, like just ideas, like basic ideas of how like the matchup should be played, or if you are supposed to drop a wave, something like that, you know, the usual. And Gax was, I mean, I hadn't met him before. I think he was a part of the academy team or something.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, I was surprised by him as well. He was like, everyone was like pitching in with their ideas, but not when they didn't have to, you know. They were just like helping solve, like it felt like everyone was working towards like the same common goal, you know. Sometimes there was like some unnecessary stuff, but it was not to the same extent as in Winter.
I see. No, that's so that the humility in knowing what you know and is crucial, because I think there's definitely environments where, as you mentioned yourself, people take ego and pride in having perceived impact, when sometimes it's not necessary and can have definitely like the opposite effect.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes the best thing you can do is do nothing, right? It's the same that applies in game. Also
Yes.
applies when you're taking up space in a room, or when you feel like you have to fill in like a void that doesn't either exist or that you can't actually fill in. I think that's at least some of the biggest issues I have with people. Some people might not mind it at all, but I feel like the biggest issue that I have when I work with people that do that is, it's just, it feels like you're kind of like trapped, and you have to like endure listening to this before you can move on, you know, when there's no need for someone to talk about something in the first place, right? But yeah, I mean, you know me, so you know this as well.
Yes.
I don't like just wasting time, basically.
Of course. Stems from what we mentioned before too, right? It's like efficiency and feeling like what you're doing matters is at the center of everything. It's like the moment that's out of the window, everything becomes just so draining. It's like if you're putting something into something and there is no movement in any direction and potentially even negative, oof, the days become long and people want to go home after scrims.
Yeah. I mean, it becomes, everyone will go through this, but it basically just becomes like, a job, right? And you end up waking up and wishing it was an off day,
Yes.
And ideally, it shouldn't be like that. Off days are great, like even when you're winning, like you need off days still, but you shouldn't wake up and feel like you don't want to go to work, and that's for sure how it felt like in winter, maybe even some points in 2022, but for sure in winter it felt like that. And that's a big reason of why I guess I didn't mention that, but yeah, that's a big reason why I didn't continue either, right? So
yeah. No, I don't envy people that work 9 to 5s and they hate their job, man. That's tough.
If you like your job, that's fine, but if you hate your job, that's
I hope everyone has can eventually find the means to break through, but I understand that there's a lot of moving pieces, right? It's like sometimes people need to care for others and need to care for people, but like in our line of work, performance is so crucial. So if you're wasting time, there's so many things that catch up to you, It's like some jobs, you can come into them and you can hate the job and just do the thing. But then there is things that are like performance driven at the highest level where it's like the love for the work needs to be there because you're going to get beaten by teams that have that in place. Right?
Yeah.
So the G2 series you mentioned, I hate to break up old wounds, or not old wounds, they're pretty fresh, right?
They're pretty fresh, but that's okay. It's okay.
What stood out to you as the things that could have been different? Like I have some ideas, but I think people would rather hear from you.
I think from like personal play, I think the first 2 games against BDS could have been better, but ever since then, I think honestly, I made mistakes, but I think the people I played against on average made more mistakes, and that applies to Brokenblade as well. Like I think like he played really well some games, but I would actually say like on average, given the games and like the matchups, like I was usually, I would say, performing on a pretty good level. I'd say for the series against G2, there were like a lot of things that like I made mistakes, obviously, like chasing into team fights.
Yes.
Like a lot of things that went wrong. But also a lot of the games were just like kind of decided not only by the nature of the draft, but also like in 5 minutes basically of the game because of like unlucky shit happening, like some close calls, some 3v3s maybe being taken that what is it called? We could have waited with and just outscaled. Like there were like a lot of things that were, I guess, like somewhat unlucky, right? I think if I throw my mind back to it without like knowing the exact game states, I'd say game 1 was like really winnable against G2. I think that's the game where like Cassandra ends up being like really big, right? But we are like in good game state. We have like good comp as well.
Recovered well after the shit start, because the start was also like wow, like people were surviving with 1 HP left and right. I think you guys were down like 6-1, like 2k gold at some point, and then
I think that game like BB was like kind of like he was trying to play for the kills, in lane, and ended up like completely losing lane because of it. Because he just like he played way too aggro basically because under ready to match up. And I guess like he got a shutdown on Aphelios, got some plates, then I waste ult because Miki baits me on a Drake fight, and I go back down and try and 1v1 him and I die as well, right? Like stuff like this. I'd say if the game is like a lot more stable, I would say we would probably win that game 1. But at the same time, you can say the game 3 we won, I'd say we primarily won because of draft as well.
Yes.
So maybe if we won that game 1, game 3 wouldn't have happened. I'm not going to sit here and say that we should have won against G2. But there were definitely games that were winnable. I'd even say, was it game 4? Wait, I
think game 4, it was the Draven game, right? Especially after that level 1.
I think game 4 started pretty good, right?
It's like, I think that Leona died, and I think Draven might have
Iron
lost
killed the
Flash.
Rel in jungle as well and shit like that.
Yeah.
And I was playing Ornn into Cassante, going like completely even.
Yeah. And then it was like the bouncing wave on bot that like Ivan was there to defend the dive, but instead it was just like an all-out 3v3 where Draven like completely recovered the game, and that was like not necessary.
And our comp, if we are just like not too far behind where we don't have damage to kill anyone, it's basically like we have Ornn against Syndra Draven, we have Talia to follow up Nautilus, we have like the Syndra Draven shouldn't be able to play this game,
Yes.
I guess one regret, maybe not this game, but I had like some Gwen angles that I think were good. Not against,
I was
not
considering
here,
that
but
actually, yeah.
But against Matt, but we just had so little practice that in practice I knew I was confident on playing Gwen, and we were like heavily considering as well, like on stage, talking about it. But in this game, in the game 4, Ornn was also decent because there's like when we go out of lane, like Ornn against Draven Syndra, follow up, like we would basically just like they can't be on our screen basically. And I think Gwen
with you had mid that game, you had Talia.
We had Talia, Ivan, yeah. So Gwen with that is not necessarily like that insane either. There were better Gwen angles, which I think I should have taken. But yeah, I think game 4, given the state of the game, could have been winnable as well. But it's just like these are the small things. I think draft played like a huge impact as well. I think on game 2 where like Ivan decided to part top because I said that if he bounces the wave, we can actually kill him. But then he gets invaded by Olaf, right? Like we could have there was just a lot of things that if we had played more games together, we would have probably been a bit more prepared for what was going to happen, right? But that's just the nature of it.
I see. I think at the department where G2 showed like a lot of class, and I think probably would be like the decider, was I thought that the way they just fought was with very, very obvious intent always. They seem to be very in sync on when to turn, when they push forward, when they wanted to play those fights. Like they were very, very sharp at just fighting in general. I felt like G2, their approach seemed to have paid off directly after MSI when they recognized like their flaws, and it seems like they've tried to restructure themselves to be a more consistent team rather than the team that is very not reliant, but very good at producing leads that are so big that whatever you do will be right. And it seems like that in the end paid off big time, especially now going into the World Championship against you guys. I think that was also quite evident in terms of how they like just moved in unison, which is something that you see more in, let's say, from LPL teams or some of the Korean teams too. Yeah,
for sure. Their biggest strength is like their team fighting and how they play like after lane. I don't know if it will be like a big strength when they go into Worlds and play against the Eastern
teams.
That's
just the standard.
Yeah, I do think the biggest. I might be biased, right? Because like Brokenblade's really good in Europe, right? He was like the best performing European top laner probably all year. Some people maybe Photon in spring or like winter. Some people would say that, right? But I'd say like on average, like the best performing top laner in Europe this year. And also some of the other lanes like Kansama and all this, right? I think they have been really good. But I think honestly their biggest disadvantage is just getting out of lane, basically. I don't know if
the
they
context against Eastern teams.
Yeah. Of course, like in Europe and against the American teams, they're completely fine, right? Maybe even against some lower seed teams.
Weibo,
with worse laning players. Some of them have really good players at laning as well, right? But across the board, basically. I think it will be hard for them to get out. I mean, I played like 2 weeks and I go back in and I feel like against like Chasey, against Adam, against Brokenblade, there are some of these matchups that they are not very good at playing. Like, for example, I was playing Poppy against Chasey Cassandra, right? And this matchup, he should be like up in CS. Not by a lot, but by a little bit. And he should maybe be like one plate up. But he was like struggling to crash the wave and getting out traded. I was always on 100% HP. He was like on 50%, you know. Brokenblade, I think some of the champs that he will pick into like Renekton, for example, if that's meta, like Klett or something, he would get. It would be like kind of. I don't think it would be as good as of an approach for them against the Eastern teams. I think also Hansama was playing like a little bit worse, maybe because of stage jitters in the final, like in the first couple of games. Like he was getting like caught by some Syndra QE ults, like stuff like this, you know, like overspending his summoners, things like this. And they are by no means bad, you know, but I'm just like nitpicking things where I think they will be exposed. And I think it's probably like lane phase deficits and like mostly early game. But I think later in the game, if they're not too far behind and they are not playing like their troll comps, which I think they have been like doing a little bit too much in Europe, like the Fiddlesticks, Klett, or whatever they were playing, which I think has like it's like never gonna work. If they don't do that and they sharpen a bit up on this, I think they can be. I mean, they will be the strongest Western team, but they will be maybe competitive, like against Eastern teams as well.
No, I'm definitely in agreement on that department. It seems very, very tough, and on my end, like, I don't feel bad about it as people do, because I'm not filled with the delusion that the gap was ever closed, you know, because as mentioned, you know, outlier case, I'm here with Wunder, you know.
Yeah, I mean, bro, I was saying on the SAC, you know, I was saying that there's no way that like any European team wins BO5 against an Eastern team, or like a Korean or Chinese team, I should say, this Worlds. And I'm kind of still of the same opinion, honestly. I mean, nothing really changed.
Yeah,
I mean, just the fact. I mean, I guess it's like hard to say as well. But I mean, I think my whole team was playing like really insane, like Razork, Humanoid, Noah, and Trymbi, right? But it's like also a bit worrying that I can sub in without playing at all, and it's not like it's. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's not worrying, but I just feel like it's a bit worrying that it's not like hard for me to play, you know.
Yeah.
And keep up with a week of practice.
I appreciate the point you're making, and I think it makes a lot of sense, but also I think probably you are the only person that could pull this off, honestly. I maybe you and maybe.
I mean, I've never tried. You know? I've never tried before, so I guess it's like there's a first time for everything. But yeah, I mean, this is just the feelings I get that like, because I was watching like these 2 weeks, I was playing a lot, watching a lot of VODs, and I'm just trying to replicate what the Eastern teams are doing within the laning phase, and I'm not even like I'm making mistakes, right? But it's like still kind of working, you know.
Yeah.
And that kind of worries me, you know, when that like, I mean, I'm not worried as in like I don't have like no reason to cheer for any European teams. I think it's doomed as fuck, you know. But it like worries me in the sense that I don't actually. I mean, I think it just confirms my beliefs, I guess.
Yes. No, it's like it's easy to forget due to LEC scheduling being so late, but the LPL teams are very, very different, and like LCK is a bit different because I think the power level between some of them is kind of strange. It's like I think KT is much better than what they show against T1, and T1 is a strange team, and then there's Genji that is really, really fucking solid. But LPL is like, it's so easy to just look at them because of like LNG, Bilibili, JDG, and those three teams are like, those are like the picture frame of what everyone should be scared about. But thank God European teams can bootcamp in Korea, because I think that could make a big difference.
Yeah, that's true.
Was it 2019 that, or 2020 was Worlds in Europe, right?
Yeah.
And was that the year?
No, 2019 was Worlds in
2019.
Europe.
Okay.
2020 was China, I think.
Oh yeah, it was COVID. It was the COVID situation where Mad Lions didn't make it through play-ins. They lost to Armut.
Yeah, in 2019 we didn't boot camp in Korea, but that was a mistake.
That
we
was
were like so far
messy.
behind.
I remember the stories of you guys, like Damon arrives and you scream against Damon. You guys had some catching up to do.
I mean, honestly, if the Korean teams just went together and said, don't scrim G2, we would have been completely fucked, yeah. Like, we were so far behind.
Holy.
But they helped us out, I guess.
That part is pretty fucking... I think that's so important. Because like last year, it's like, sure. It's like our team specifically, we needed some time off. Maybe a different team doesn't need as much time off as we did. Like we took like 4 or 5 days. And then we had content. And then we had to fly to fucking Mexico. And like in total, maybe we could have like some practice days in Europe, scrimming against Turkish team. But like in total, maybe we could have like 6, 7 scrim days before play-in starts. And then between play-ins and the fucking main tournament, there was no time either because we had media days and we had to fly. And it's like that part was really, really in a different circumstance. If we were a team that would really need that practice, you know, and it would help us, that would have bothered me a lot more than it did at the time. You know, I think it's like a blessing that Asian Games is in place because coming into next year, I would have concerns about this again because not only us, but it's like G2 and Rogue and Mad. It's like they didn't fucking... Wait, was it Mad? Who the fuck went to Worlds last year?
Yeah, Mad
G2,
went, yeah.
Mad.
But they got knocked out in Blends.
Oh, yeah. There we go.
By EG.
See. Like, these teams didn't scrim at all or practice at all. Not that it wouldn't matter, because I think that it was a fairly weak year for Europe coming into Worlds. Maybe it would have made a difference, but the fact that no one could, like, scrim for real in New York was that's gotta be, like, a doomsday spelling. And that's going to counteract some of the outlier cases that could potentially happen for Europe in the future.
Yeah, I agree with that, yeah.
So Wunder, we've talked now for almost 3 hours.
Yeah, I'm about to, like, my bladder is about to burst, I think, actually.
I wanted to, you know, I wanted to do 2 things before we end, you know.
Okay.
Well, they're rather short. It's like, first, it's like, you know, so G2 played into this meme. They're very, very good memesters, you know. They're very, very good marketing, best org, I think, you know, in terms of, you know, extracting value from what esports is. Very, very fantastic. This is no shade on them. But it's like, for example, with Jankos, they really sold the whole his old thing, and that carried over, you know. It's like with you, it's the whole World of Warcraft thing, and you played into it too. But, you know, in essence, there's people out there that believe in it's like, oh, Wunder is not working out. What would you say to dispel that? And I would, of course, support that because I know you very, very well.
I mean, it depends on kind of like what era, I guess. Because I mean, I had been with G2 for it was like 3 years, right?
Yes.
And I guess even after that, those memes continued. But I mean, one thing that is for sure is that, like, whenever we were scrimming, like, I was always trying, like, really hard to, like, if it came to just, like, making sure that the matchups, like, matchup knowledge, or just, like, just, like, a lot of, like, I was putting a lot of effort into basically just the scrims, because I felt like, of course, like, well, the scrims are the best practice you can have to the first stage, right? The solo queue is not the good practice. Like, there's no reason to put as much effort into solo queue as you do to scrims. And besides that, it's just dependent on how much I felt like I needed to practice certain matchups is how much I would play solo queue. Usually, that would be like the case. Or if there was like a champ that basically, like, let's say Shyvana or something that I really thought could be good and also was fun to play in 2019, I would spam it a little bit, you know. But besides that, for sure, like compared to my teammates, like Caps, for example, or even Jankos, because he has like a second job, which is streaming, where he just spams solo queue.
Yes.
Like I was for sure not playing as much as them. At times, maybe I was playing as much as Perks. If he had he also was like, at certain times he would play way less solo queue, and sometimes he would like play a lot, right? He had like a balance like that as well. I was probably like playing a little bit less than that even, but there are players like that was like compared to my teammates, which is why the meme had been like born,
Yes.
I was doing other things to like take my mind off, well, basically the game for a little bit. I was just doing things where some people might like read a book. I was just playing another game,
Yes.
And that was kind of how I operated. And I still do sometimes, but I mean, only if if there's another game that is good and that I like, It's not like I don't play WoW all the time, I'm just chilling when I feel like it's best for me to chill, and that's basically how I operated for the most part. But I mean, right now, honestly, I have like enjoyment from League as well. Of course, like there's no point in me sitting spamming like 20 games every single day and like completely and losing the joy I have for League before like a split starts. I feel like that makes no sense. But yeah, with the new format and all that, it makes a lot more sense to be in shape before the splits even start right now. Because I mean, you need to perform. Like if you're not performing week 1, then you're maybe already fucked, And it's not always like that. Like you had a little bit more leeway. Like of course you always practice before a split started, but you might have like practiced not to win, but just to be like ready on some champions and not everything. But now I feel like you have to be ready on everything, and I guess that's how I'm gonna practice from now on, with the format in mind.
Okay. And like I can also add, knowing like we've worked together for 5 splits in total, and there was never a point in time where I felt like you were not in tune with what was expected from you and you bringing that in on a day-to-day basis. And I just wanted to have that said out loud, because I know that, sometimes as a viewer, you might have a perception on someone because you're not as heavily invested to things. And that's okay, right? Because some people consume things like that, and that's perfectly fine. It's like I watch Drive to Survive, but I haven't watched a single Formula One race. It's like my knowledge on Formula One is like me saying, yeah, Wunder is a World of Warcraft player. Like that's basically the level of consumption that I have. But I wanted to have that said out loud because I mean,
what you said is like, I mean, what I believe in for mostly as well, right? Like if you ever show up to Scrim and you're not like, I want to show up to every Scrim and like feel it, I don't like if you're showing up to a Scrim and you don't feel like being there or playing, then you're wasting the time of all your teammates as well. That's like the worst you can do, basically. So if you're not, if you've been spamming 10 hours of solo queue, all this doesn't matter if you show up to scrims and you're wasting everyone's time, That's like the worst you can do, I think.
And then finally, before your bladder bursts, Wunder, we will be seeing you in the LEC next year.
I mean, that was always my hope, yeah. I don't know when.
No LCS business, huh? We keep you here in Europe.
Oh yeah, I mean, like, I'm not gonna like say I'm not gonna like limit myself in my options.
C9
right?
Wunder, Jojo Pune. Oh.
Because right now, I mean, you say that, right? Like I'm of the beliefs that there are only certain NA teams that are probably worth joining, and C9 would be one of them. So like, I feel like the top tier NA teams are like teams that can have like they kind of have like the same culture as some European teams, I feel like.
Yeah.
and I think I would only go to teams that are not top NA teams if I had like absolutely no offers. You know, this would be my last resort to try and then I guess make a name for myself in NA, right? But as of right now, I'm hoping that I get some good offers, and that was always my plan, regardless if I subbed in or not. I was always gonna be wanting to play next year, and yeah, maybe I'll make that a possibility. I hope so, at least.
To round off, it's like if I work in a team in any capacity coming into next year, then I, as a person that would build a team, Wunder would be a #1 target for me, 100%. And
maybe we'll have a reunion then.
Yeah, maybe.
Who knows? Who knows?
I'm happy that you got an opportunity to show yourself off a little bit, you know, because it's like I know how the space works sometimes, and
yeah,
it can be sometimes very, very unfair. And I'm happy that you got the chance to show yourself off. In the end, you know, it's like people need to know who the top lane GOAT of Europe is. Yeah, and
yeah, it was good. It was good for sure for my career. Yeah.
Feels fucking horrible for fucking Oscarinin though. I hope that he can extract whatever good he can out of the situation and use it to.
I mean, I hope they do. I hope they do good at Worlds. Like, I mean, as I said, I don't have much hope for like the Western teams overall, right? But if they can show good performances in spite of that, that's probably the best case for them. And I mean, like as a rookie player playing Worlds in your first year, I mean, regardless of the circumstances of how you got there or what happens, I guess hope for him he makes the best of it anyways.
Yep. You is there any chance that you play for Fnatic at Worlds? Like, or is he cleared on the recovery part from his doctors and
from what I've been told, then no. I mean, I think if I would have, something had to go wrong in surgery, and since he already had surgery, I think it's pretty unlikely.
Okay.
I mean, unless he like breaks it again or something. I mean, like I don't know what would have to go wrong. I assume, like at least in my head, how it would work is once you have surgery and nothing went wrong during the surgery, I think you are like, it's like pretty reasonable to expect that the time frame that you have gotten is the time frame it's going to be until you could play again.
Okay.
And that's with Worlds included for him. So I don't think I will be playing, but I guess I will be in Korea, and in case anything happens, maybe it could happen, you know. I don't know.
Okay. Cool. No, I hope that he recovers quickly and that they can actually like find time to scrim and practice in Korea. I hope, because that's also essential, right? Like if he recovers 1 week ahead of Worlds, then you know it's gonna be like
that would be hard for
bucket
sure.
of cold water. It's gonna be rough.
Yeah.
Wunder, 3 hours. We locked in 3 hours,
man.
This has been a pleasure. The time went past. I'm noticing now. I'm fucking very hungry, actually. I'm
hungry, but I definitely need to rush to the toilet after this.
Okay. Then, Wunder, I'm going to round off. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Thank you, Wunder, for taking the time. I am excited to see you in Tracking the Pros. I'm going to be watching. I'm going to be streaming. I'm going to be a goblin here in Europe, but I'll be paying attention.
Yeah. I'll probably join the SAC for the World. I mean, I'll be going home like 2 days after playing start, so I guess I'll be in the SAC then.
You're gonna be actually. Maybe if you go on that fuckery sleep schedule, then you're gonna be perfect because it's gonna start at like 5 a.m., 6 a.m.
Yeah. Who knows?
I'm hoping I get co-streaming right. I reached out. I have the bat signal up, and I'm hoping that I get to work with a specific team, but I don't want to name them to put pressure on them because, you know, I'm cool like that. Okay.
Yeah.
Boom.